All right, so buckle up, everybody, because this deep dive is it's taking us way beyond like the usual, future tech stuff. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like we're talking about building a whole civilization like from scratch,
Yeah.
and not just anywhere on like some distant planet, but on an island
Yeah.
using only what they have like right there.
It's a fascinating concept. You know what I mean? It's almost like shockingly ambitious when you really think about it. And what's so interesting to me is that this Civilization of Sand document you shared, it's focused on like a real place, North Stradbroke Island.
Yeah.
It makes you think about the potential of places we're just kind of like walking by every day.
Exactly. It's like we're talking about sand here,
Yeah.
not some, rare element or whatever.
Right.
But that's what's so cool about it. They're saying you can build a civilization with something most people just completely take for granted.
And that's where the really interesting stuff is. We're not talking about making sandcastles here. The document goes into incredible detail about how these minerals in straty sand, like quartz, ilmenite, rutile, zircon, monazite, they can be used to create everything from electronics to even like spacecraft parts.
Oh, and spacecraft parts from sand. I mean, come on. That sounds like something out of Star Wars.
Yeah, it sounds pretty futuristic, but the science is there. Take ilmenite and rutile, for example. Those minerals are naturally full of titanium, and titanium is super valuable because it's strong, lightweight, and doesn't rust easily. We already use it for airplanes and medical implants, so using it for spacecraft components isn't that crazy.
So they're really going to extract titanium from sand to build spaceships. I mean, that's incredibly ambitious.
It is. And the document doesn't hide from that. They even talk about improving something called the Kroll process. It's how we usually make titanium, but they want to make it more efficient and better for the environment.
So they're taking what we already have and like making it better to fit their vision. It's not just about the what, it's the how. And speaking of how does the civilization of sand plan to keep the lights on? I mean, any kind of civilization needs a ton of energy.
They thought of that too. The document really focuses on renewable energy, especially solar power. And remember all that quartz sand? Well, quartz is the main ingredient in silicon. And silicon is what makes solar panels work. So they're basically sitting on a gold mine of potential solar energy.
Okay, I have to admit, that's really clever. Using the power of the sun to build a civilization from sand, it's a pretty cool idea.
It is, and it points to a bigger theme I'm seeing in these documents. Using what's already around us in new and sustainable ways, it's about working with nature, not against it, to build a future where technology and the environment can exist together.
It all sounds great. But what about the details? Like, how would this civilization actually work day to day? Do they have plans for like a government or buildings or even like how people would live together?
Yeah, those are great questions. And while the Civilization of Sand document doesn't really answer them, there's another document you sent, JJ Earth, Global Association for Joyful, Responsible Abundance on Earth. That might give us some clues.
JJR Earth. Okay, now that's a new one. Tell me more.
Well, it seems like JJ Earth is about creating a global society focused on mindful abundance, technological progress, and ethical responsibility.
Okay, I can see where this might connect. Could this civilization of sand be like a small-scale version of the JJR Earth idea, like a test run for a much bigger global change?
It's definitely possible. Both documents talk about sustainability, ethical resource management, and a forward-thinking approach to technology.
It's interesting how these separate documents might actually be related, like puzzle pieces that fit together. But before we go too far into global change, let's get back to Straty. If they're serious about building a future there, they need to think about some very real dangers. And I'm not talking about a little bad weather.
You're right. And that leads us to the Space Weather News Hub document, which focuses on a threat a lot of people don't even consider space weather.
Space weather? Okay, I'll admit, I don't usually think about that when I'm planning a trip, let alone, building a whole civilization.
Yeah.
What exactly are we talking about here? Like, are we going to get sunburned on a global scale?
Haha. That's a funny way to put it. And it's not exactly sunburns we have to worry about. But yeah, the sun's activity can really mess things up down here on Earth. Think solar flares, coronal mass ejections, geomagnetic storms, all that stuff can disrupt satellites, communications, even knock out power grids.
Wow. Okay, so it's not just a theoretical thing.
Yeah.
And this Space Weather News Hub is suggesting they're actively keeping track of and predicting these events.
Exactly. This document is all about understanding how complex space weather really is and how it can affect us, especially now that we rely on technology so much.
So it's like a weather forecast.
Yeah.
But instead of telling us to grab an umbrella, it's telling us to like batten down the hatches and protect our tech from a solar storm.
Precisely. They're talking about using sensors on the ground and in space and using AI to analyze all that data to keep track of the sun and predict what it might do. And remember that pseudocode we talked about earlier? It looks like that plays a big role in making sense of all this data.
Oh, yeah. The mysterious code.
Hmm.
What are they trying to learn from it?
Well, it seems like it's not just about watching the weather happen. They're trying to build models that can actually predict the effects of solar storms and stuff.
So they're trying to anticipate these events and maybe get some kind of early warning system in place.
Exactly. Imagine knowing that a massive solar storm is headed our way days or even weeks before it hits. We could protect important equipment, shut down vulnerable systems, and maybe prevent blackouts and all the chaos that comes with them.
That'd be amazing. So it's like they're trying to build a civilization that's not just made of sand, but one that can actually withstand the forces of space. But is it all just about defense? Or are they looking at ways to use space weather to their advantage?
That's a great question. And while the documents don't get into specifics about harnessing space weather, there are hints that they're open to anything. For example, they mentioned developing a radon detection system as part of this space weather news hub.
Radon detection. Now, how does that fit into all of this? Radon is that radioactive gas, right? I don't see the connection to space.
That's where it gets really interesting. There's a lot of research being done right now that suggests that geomagnetic storms, those bursts of energy from the sun, they might actually affect radon levels here on Earth.
Seriously. So space weather isn't just a threat to our technology. It could directly affect our health, too.
Exactly. And that's why this space weather news hub is so important. It's not just about saving our smartphones. It's about understanding this complicated relationship between the sun, our planet, and our own well-being. But speaking of well-being, there's this whole other concept buried in the GAJRE Earth material that we haven't talked about yet. Kardashev's subterranean eco-cities.
Kardashev's subterranean eco-cities. That sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie. What's the deal with that? Are they saying we should all move underground?
Well, it's not quite that extreme, not yet anyway. But the document does make you wonder about living on the surface long term, especially with space weather and other environmental challenges becoming more and more intense.
So are we all supposed to just become mole people and live underground forever?
Not necessarily abandon the surface entirely, but maybe we need to rethink how we live on it. Imagine a world where most of the surface is left to nature, and we live in these interconnected underground cities powered by geothermal energy and shielded from the elements.
It's definitely a different way of thinking about city planning.
Yeah.
But how would that even work in real life? I mean, it's a cool idea, but living underground, even in some high-tech eco-city, just feels kind of, I don't know, claustrophobic.
I get it. We're used to open sky, sunshine, fresh air, but it's not about replacing the surface. It's more like creating a whole new kind of ecosystem underground, one that can thrive on its own.
Okay, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
So what would it actually be like to live in one of these subterranean cities?
Think of like big open spaces underground connected by tunnels, lit with these soft lights that feel like natural sunlight. And there are plants everywhere, vertical gardens growing on the walls, giving off oxygen, cleaning the air. And of course, they'd need super advanced air filters too, making sure there's always fresh, clean air to breathe. It's about making it more than just livable. It has to be a place where people actually want to be.
Okay, yeah, that actually doesn't sound too bad. But how would they even power these cities? If they're underground, no more solar panels, right?
Right. The GAJRA Earth document mentions geothermal energy as like the main power source, using the heat from inside the Earth to generate power. And remember those rare earth minerals we talked about before, like monazite found in straty sand? Those are super important for a lot of advanced tech, like energy-efficient lighting and maybe even fusion power someday.
It's wild to think that something as basic as sand could have the potential to build this whole future, both above ground and below.
It really is. And it shows how these documents connect to each other. Like they're building on the same ideas, this future where technology and nature can work together, not against each other. It's been quite a deep dive today. We've gone from talking about tiny grains of sand to giant underground cities. What are your big takeaways from all this? What really stuck with you?
I think for me, it's how ambitious these ideas are.
Yeah.
It's one thing to talk about the technology and the details, but the overall vision is huge. To build a civilization that's not just advanced, but also sustainable, fair, and ready for anything, whether it's a natural disaster or something coming from space.
And they're not just dreaming. They've really thought about how to make it happen, taking what we have now and making it better, coming up with completely new ideas. It's pretty inspiring.
Definitely. And it goes back to what you said earlier about the potential hiding in plain sight. We tend to think of progress as these big, flashy discoveries, but maybe it's really about finding new ways to use what's already around us, whether it's the minerals in the ground or the sun in the sky. The answer might be closer than we realize.
I think that's a great point. And maybe the biggest takeaway here is that we're not just along for the ride. We actually get to create the future. And these documents are like an invitation to think differently about what's possible and to start building that future one step at a time, whether it's writing a line of code, choosing a more sustainable option, or even just changing the way we think about the world around us.
I love that. And on that note, we'll leave our listeners with this. What will your contribution be? What seemingly small thing do you have the power to change that could make a difference? Thanks for joining us on this incredible deep dive. Until next time. Welcome to your deep dive, everybody. Buckle up, because we're diving headfirst into some seriously wild theories about Earth's future. Think like ancient climate cycles, the sun throwing a cosmic tantrum, and yeah, even a little peek at how some folks are prepping for, just in case.
Color me intrigued. The stack of research you've got here is something else. What's crazy is how often a major global shift pops up. But what that actually looks like, well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yes. So to make sense of all this, we're going to break it down source by source, cherry pick the most mind-blowing bits, and try to connect the dots. Get ready for some serious aha moments, folks, because this is a goldmine of mind-bending ideas. First up, the big kahuna, climate change. But get this, some of this research throws a wrench in the whole human-caused warming thing.
It really flips the script, this 2022 supplement to next end of the world thing, for example. It's saying we've been a tad obsessed with carbon emissions and like not paying enough attention to solar activity and natural cycles that could be way more powerful than we realize.
Wait, so all those dire predictions about runaway warming? Maybe not so accurate.
That's what this research is suggesting. It's saying that things like solar particle forcing, basically, how particles from the sun mess with our atmosphere, and the fact that Earth's magnetic field is like losing its mojo have been kind of downplayed. And that's led to an overblown idea of how much we're actually impacting things.
So instead of this whole hotter and hotter scenario, we might actually be headed for a cool down.
Exactly. The source lays out this whole cyclical pattern thing, even tying those crazy polar vortex winters we had a while back into this bigger cycle of ice melt, changing ocean currents, and yeah, even potential cooling periods.
So those extreme winters that seem to buck the warming trend might actually be part of a much bigger, more complex picture.
And think of it like this. Imagine a giant bathtub. That's our planet, right? Now picture someone dumping a ton of ice cubes into one end. That's like the massive ice melt happening in, Greenland and Antarctica. That rush of cold water messes with the currents in our bathtub, just like it throws off ocean currents on a global scale. And what happens? Some areas actually start getting colder.
Okay, that's a pretty wild image. And speaking of wild weather, this research also mentions something called a Heinrich event. Rapid cooling, massive ice melt. Should we be worried?
It's definitely something to, keep an eye on. The way they describe it, a Heinrich event, is this sudden surge of icebergs into the North Atlantic, like a tidal wave of ice, basically. And that throws the ocean currents totally out of whack and causes really rapid cooling in certain areas. Like, imagine a giant slushy machine suddenly dumping its contents into the ocean. That's the kind of scale we're talking about.
Intense. And this research says we're due for one of these Heinrich events, soon.
That's their claim, that these events happen roughly every 6,000 years and that we're currently in the window for the next one.
Wow, okay. So, yeah, we could be in for a bumpy ride, weather-wise. But let's not forget about good old Sol the sun. It's not just about sunshine, is it?
Not even close. This research gets into how solar wind, magnetic fields, those particle bursts the sun throws out, they can really mess with our planet in some unexpected ways.
Yeah, it mentions the sun affecting our atmosphere, maybe even triggering earthquakes, even screwing up our tech. Is there any truth to that?
Some of it's actually legit science. Like, we know solar flares and coronal mass ejections, basically, the sun booping out this huge burst of energy can mess with satellites and even knock out power grids down here on Earth.
So those sci-fi movies where a solar flare fries all our gadgets aren't totally out there.
Maybe not quite as dramatic, but they do highlight how dependent we are on tech that's, let's face it, pretty vulnerable to the sun's temper tantrums.
Right.
And here's the kicker. The research also says that Earth's magnetic field, our shield against the solar wind, it's weakening.
Hold up, weakening. That's not good, right?
Nope, not good at all. A weaker magnetic field means Earth's more exposed to those solar outbursts. Like, our planet's force field is losing power.
This deep dive is making me want to go stock up on surge protectors. But it gets even weirder. The research also talks about solar storms messing with our health.
There's some research out there, yeah, that links solar activity to stuff like, anxiety, trouble sleeping, maybe even heart problems. More research is needed, of course, but it's definitely an interesting avenue to explore.
It really makes you wonder how much we still don't know about how the sun affects us, both our planet and our bodies. But hold on tight, folks, because this deep dive is about to go full-on cosmic.
This is where it gets really out there. The research brings up this crazy concept of a galactic current sheet, this massive rippling sheet of electricity that basically spans the entire Milky Way galaxy.
Okay, a galactic current sheet. That sounds like something straight out of Star Wars. Break it down for us.
Imagine our solar system cruising through the Milky Way, right? Well, this galactic current sheet is like a giant wave that we bob up and down through. And get this, the research says that these galactic dips might actually be shaking things up here on Earth.
Wait, you're telling me that this cosmic wave could be messing with our climate, geology, even how life itself evolved on Earth?
That's what they're saying. And it gets even wilder. The source claims we're also on the verge of a galactic magnetic reversal.
A galactic magnetic reversal. Okay, that sounds serious.
Basically, it's like flipping a giant magnet. Imagine the entire magnetic field of our galaxy reversing north becomes south, south becomes north, the whole shebang. And guess what? The source says that similar events in other galaxies have been linked to, like, crazy energy surges and stuff.
So we've got this galactic magnetic flip coming up, Earth's magnetic field is already weakening, and the sun's acting up. It's like a perfect storm brewing on a cosmic scale. This deep dive went from zero to mind-blown in record time.
And we're just getting started. Remember those preppers we mentioned earlier? Well, they pop up again in the next part, and let me tell you, it gets interesting. It's not just, like, hoarding beans and ammo anymore.
All right.
This research, it dives into this whole prepper subculture.
Yeah.
And it's wild. I mean, for some people, prepping for, the end of the world as we know it,
Right.
it's not just a hobby.
It's a lifestyle.
Exactly. We're talking billionaires building underground bunkers,
Yeah.
celebrities hoarding supplies like it's going out of style.
It's like a Hollywood movie.
Right.
Seriously.
It's clear that this whole, societal collapse thing,
Yeah.
it's really hitting a nerve, even for folks who seemingly have it all.
That's so true.
But it's not all, every man for himself and hiding out in a bunker.
Right.
The research also talks about this really interesting
Yeah.
focus on community resilience.
Right. Exactly.
Resourcefulness, right.
Yeah.
Adapting to whatever comes our way.
Love that.
It's more about coming together.
Yeah.
Learning to rely on each other, figuring out how to,
Yeah.
make do with what we've got.
Right. Exactly.
Now, speaking of making do, this next source takes us to North Stradbroke Island,
Okay.
where this group of, shall we say, forward thinkers
Okay.
are proposing a pretty wild thought experiment.
Okay.
They want to build this
Yeah.
advanced, self-sufficient civilization using only local resources.
North Stradbroke Island.
You ever heard of it?
I have, yeah.
Yeah.
What's so special about it?
Well, first of all,
Yeah.
mineral sands galore.
Okay.
And we're not just talking like your average beach sand. This is high-grade stuff.
Yeah.
Quartz, ilmenite,
Oh, wow.
rutile, zircon, all those tongue twisters.
Right.
They're actually packed with ingredients for some really high-tech stuff.
What kind of stuff are we talking about?
Okay, so basically, they want to turn this island into
Yeah.
this futuristic eco-paradise
Right.
using these minerals to create everything.
Okay.
From solar panels, super durable ceramics to get this
Yeah.
space-hardened computer chips.
Space-hardened. Like, whoa, hold on. I'm not totally following, like, space-hardened computer chips. What does that even mean?
Okay, so imagine a computer chip
Yeah.
that can withstand, like, the most brutal conditions.
Oops.
Outer space,
Okay.
extreme temperatures, radiation,
Right, sure.
the vacuum of space.
Got it.
These chips are, like, built tougher,
Okay.
smarter, with, like,
Yeah.
backups upon backups, because in space,
Yeah.
there's no room for errors.
Makes sense. But how do you even, like, begin to make that on a remote island?
That's the cool part.
Okay.
We're not talking like these massive factories
Really?
churning out chips.
Okay.
It's more about small scale, like high precision manufacturing.
Right.
Think of it like master craftspeople
Oh,
handcrafting these chips
wow.
with the utmost care and precision.
So it's like artisan computer chips.
Yeah, exactly. But they're not just doing it for kicks.
Right. What's the bigger picture here? Why go through all that trouble?
Well, for starters,
Yeah.
space-hardened chips,
Yeah.
they have a ton of uses here on Earth, too.
Right.
Think about anything that needs to, like, withstand extreme conditions.
Yeah.
Deep sea exploration
Yeah.
devices used in, like, disaster relief.
Makes sense.
So it's not just about surviving, like,
Right.
the apocalypse.
Yeah.
It's about using this technology to thrive in all sorts of challenging environments.
I love that. So it's about more than just surviving
Totally.
a global shift.
Yeah.
It's about using these advanced technologies to thrive no matter what.
Exactly.
Love it.
But it goes even deeper than that.
Okay.
This whole vision for North Stradbroke Island,
Yeah.
it's not just about, like, fancy tech.
Right.
It's about rethinking our entire relationship
Okay.
with the environment,
Yeah.
technology, each other.
Right.
It's about a whole new way of living
I love that.
that's sustainable, resilient,
Right.
deeply connected to the community and, like, the natural world.
So they're taking all these different threads, right?
Yeah.
Climate change, resource scarcity,
Yeah.
technological innovation,
Exactly.
and they're like weaving them together
That's a great way to put it.
into this whole new picture
Yeah.
of what's possible. That's exciting.
It's inspiring, but let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
This is still, a thought experiment.
Right?
A lot of moving parts here.
Right. Like, how do you even power this place? Are we talking like
Right.
solar panels everywhere,
Mm.
wind farms on every hilltop?
They've got it all mapped out. They want to create this hybrid energy system
Okay.
that draws on a mix of renewables. So solar, obviously,
Right.
wind
Yeah.
power.
Right.
They're even talking about harnessing energy from ocean waves.
Oh, wow.
And here's the really smart part.
Yeah.
They're not just thinking about, like, generating energy.
Mm.
They're figuring out how to store it
Oh, that's smart.
for when the sun's not shining or the wind's not blowing.
So it's like a giant
Exactly.
sustainable battery for the whole island.
That's a great way to think about it.
Wow.
And they're talking about using some seriously innovative technology.
What kind of stuff?
Advanced battery systems, pumped hydro storage,
Right.
even something called compressed air energy storage,
Okay.
which basically involves using excess energy to, like, pump air into underground caverns and then releasing it
Right.
to generate electricity on demand.
Wow, that's some next level thinking right there.
Right.
Seriously. It's so cool.
Outside the box thinking.
Totally. But it can't all be about high-tech solutions, right?
Right.
Like, imagine they've also thought about how to, like,
Oh, yeah.
actually grow food on this island.
Of course. They're talking about a multi-layered approach to agriculture,
Okay.
combining traditional methods
Right.
with some really cutting-edge tech.
Like,
Think vertical farms,
okay.
bathed in LED light,
Wow.
hydroponic greenhouses,
Very cool.
even using algae to
Totally.
create biofuels
Okay.
and nutritional supplements.
That's amazing. Algae for fuel and food that's thinking ahead.
It's all about creating this closed-loop system,
Right.
right, where you minimize waste,
Right.
maximize efficiency at every level.
Totally.
Imagine, like, your leftover food scraps
Yeah.
helping to power your home
Wow.
and fertilize the algae that ends up in your smoothie.
That's amazing.
That's the kind of radical reimagining of resource management they're
Right.
talking about.
It's like this giant interconnected
Like this-
ecosystem where
Yeah.
everything works in harmony.
Yeah,
That's beautiful.
it's a beautiful vision.
It really is. It really makes you rethink like what
Yeah.
a sustainable future could look like.
Absolutely.
But let's be real for a second.
Okay.
Building a civilization
Right.
from scratch,
Yeah.
that takes more than
It doesn't.
just like cool tech and some clever ideas.
Right.
It takes people,
It does.
a lot of them.
That's a really good point.
Right.
And the source actually addresses that. They know they need skilled workers.
Right.
So they've got this whole plan for attracting talent to the island,
Okay.
establishing educational programs,
Right.
training local residents,
Right.
and leveraging automation and robotics wherever possible.
Robots building a sustainable future.
Right.
Sign me up.
Okay, but seriously, this is all super cool.
Yes.
But, like, is it even possible?
That's the question, right?
Yeah.
Could North Stradbroke Island actually become this model for a new kind of civilization?
Right.
And honestly,
Yeah.
it might not be about like a literal island,
Right.
right? It's more about the thinking behind it.
Right.
Remember, this is a thought experiment,
Yeah, okay.
a way to explore possibilities and kind of push the boundaries of what we think is possible.
Right.
Right.
Really, eh?
Some parts of this plan
might be easier to implement than others.
Right. Yeah.
But the bigger takeaway for me is that we need to be thinking big,
Yes.
embracing innovative solutions,
Yes.
and never underestimating like the power of human ingenuity.
It's a good reminder that, like, we have the power
We do.
to shape our future.
We absolutely do.
And sometimes the most, like, radical ideas
Totally.
are the ones that can lead to the biggest changes.
100%.
It's really cool. Okay, so we've got preppers prepping.
Prepping away.
You've got this wild idea
Yeah.
for a futuristic island civilization.
Right.
But we haven't touched on those space-hardened computer chips
No,
in a
already
while.
had.
Okay,
Okay.
get ready.
Okay.
Because this is where the deep dive takes another turn.
Okay.
Because it turns out those chips, the ones designed to survive, like the horrors of space,
Yeah.
they also hold the key to understanding
Yeah.
our planet's distant past.
Space-hardened computer chips and Earth's ancient past. I gotta admit, I'm not quite connecting the dots here. It's all about zircon crystals, my friend.
Zircon crystals, like the things they put in jewelry.
Yep, those shiny little things. But they're not just pretty faces. Zircon crystals also happen to be incredibly durable, like ridiculously durable. We're talking billions of years old, surviving basically unchanged while the rocks around them are melting and reforming and doing all sorts of crazy geological gymnastics.
So like little time capsules holding secrets from like the dawn of time.
Exactly. And here's the kicker. The same technology they use to create those super precise space-hardened computer chips. It can also be used to analyze these zircon crystals, like unlock the secrets trapped inside.
Hold on, so by developing tech for space exploration, we're also opening up a window into Earth's deep history. That's kind of poetic when you think about it.
It really is. It just goes to show knowledge isn't linear. It's all connected, a big web of insights, and sometimes the most unexpected connections are the ones that lead to the biggest breakthroughs.
This whole deep dive has been full of those whoa moments. From solar storms to climate change, from preppers to futuristic islands, and now zircon crystals and the secrets of Earth's past. It's mind-blowing, really.
It really makes you appreciate the sheer scale of things, doesn't it? And the fact that we're just starting to scratch the surface of understanding how it all fits together.
So where does this leave us? What's the takeaway from all this wild speculation about Earth's future?
I think the biggest takeaway for me is that the future isn't some predetermined thing. It's not set in stone. It's a choose-your-own-adventure story, and we all have a say in how it unfolds.
That's a good point. It's easy to get caught up in the doom and gloom, but we have more agency than we realize.
Exactly. We can choose to be passive passengers along for the ride, or we can step up, get our hands dirty, and help steer things in a better direction. It's up to us.
Love that. So what's the one thing you hope listeners take away from this deep dive?
Curiosity, I think. A sense of wonder about the world around us, and a desire to learn more, to dig deeper, to ask questions. That's what drives progress, ultimately.
Beautifully said. Well, folks, there you have it. A whirlwind tour through the wildest theories about Earth's future. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the sun's temper tantrums to the secrets hidden within tiny crystals, and even a few billionaire bunkers along the way.
It's been a wild ride.
It has. But ultimately, it's up to each of us to decide what we do with this information. Do we panic? Do we prep? Or do we choose to be optimistic, to embrace the unknown, and to work towards a brighter future?
Those are the questions, aren't they?
They sure are. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder those questions. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey into Earth's future. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and never stop being curious.
All right, so you sent in some really interesting stuff for this deep dive. I gotta say, when I first saw it, scientific excerpts, plans for a whole civilization on North Stradbroke Island, and even meeting notes, I was like, whoa, where do we even begin? But let's dive right in.
Yeah, it's a pretty wild mix, right? I'm seeing some common themes, though: potential catastrophes, how technology plays into everything, and the importance of community. It's definitely got my attention.
For sure. Let's start with this next end-of-the-world excerpt. It's got a very different perspective on climate change, wouldn't you say? It actually claims that pollution from humans, all that stuff we hear about, it's not really the main driver of what's happening.
Right, it's definitely a different take.
It talks about these things called Dansgaard-Oeschger events and Heinrich events. Have you ever heard of those?
Oh yeah, definitely. You'll often hear them shortened to DO and Heinrich events, actually. Basically, there are these natural climate fluctuations that have been happening throughout Earth's entire history. We're talking rapid temperature shifts,
Yeah.
especially in the North Atlantic, and they end up having a huge impact on global climate patterns like a domino effect.
So it's not just this gradual warming thing then. This excerpt claims that because of these Earth cycles, solar activity, Earth's magnetic field, ocean currents, all that we're actually about to head into a major cooling event. It even mentions something called a green Sahara period, which sounds kind of crazy, to be honest.
Yeah, the Green Sahara period is one of those things that really makes you think, right now we think of the Sahara Desert as this incredibly dry, unforgiving place, right? But we're talking about a time when it was actually much wetter, greener. And it all comes down to these shifts in Earth's orbit over incredibly long periods. Those shifts change monsoon patterns, wind currents. It's a whole chain reaction.
So instead of this idea of the planet just getting hotter and hotter, it's more like we're on this roller coaster of dramatic swings controlled by forces way beyond just us. I gotta say, that's a pretty different way of looking at things.
It definitely highlights just how complex Earth's climate system really is and how much we still don't understand. It doesn't mean human activity has zero impact, but it does suggest these massive cyclical forces are at play that we've got to factor in.
And the excerpt keeps going. It talks about space weather, too. Apparently, solar flares and coronal mass ejections, these big bursts of energy from the sun, they can mess with our tech, our health, maybe even cause earthquakes. It sounds like something straight out of a movie, you know?
It's one of those things that connects back to the themes of preparedness and resilience we see popping up in the other documents, too. Like, imagine a major solar storm hitting Earth. Our power grids could go down, communication systems could get fried suddenly. We're living in a world without all the tech we depend on.
Yeah, it's not just some far-off hypothetical threat, is it? It makes those preppers who are always getting ready for the end of the world seem a little less, well, out there.
Right. It's not necessarily about holing up in a bunker, but it does highlight how important resilience is, both for us as individuals and for society as a whole. It makes you think, how do we design systems that aren't so fragile? How do we learn to adapt and bounce back when the unexpected hits?
Speaking of resilience, let's talk about this North Stradbroke Island plan. This Civilization of Sand document is full of ambitious ideas. They're talking about transforming the entire island into a totally self-sufficient, technologically advanced civilization.
Yeah, it's a bold vision, that's for sure. What's interesting to me is that they're not just talking about getting by, about mere survival. They want to create a civilization that thrives, even with all these potential global challenges.
And they're banking on the island's mineral sands to do it. They're talking about using quartz for solar panels, titanium for construction, zircon for super durable ceramics, even rare earth elements for all things electronics.
What really stood out to me was this goal of reaching Type 1 civilization status. It's a way of classifying civilizations based on how much energy they use.
Oh, yeah, I remember hearing about that. Remind me what type 1 is again.
A Type 1 civilization can harness and use all the energy available on its planet. They've moved beyond just relying on fossil fuels or simple renewables. We're talking planetary scale energy mastery here.
That's a whole different level. And it makes sense considering what we were just talking about with these potential disruptions to our usual energy sources.
Exactly. This isn't just about being self-sufficient. It's about anticipating these big challenges and building systems that are inherently more resilient from the ground up.
But it's clear that this North Stradbroke Island plan is about a lot more than just cool technology, right? These meeting notes you sent in, they really highlight just how important the community aspect is in all of this.
Absolutely. Technology is just one piece of the puzzle. They're talking about the challenges of bringing together all these different groups on the island, everything from like the Point Lookout Bowls Club to the local fishing clubs and other community organizations. Their goal is to create this shared sense of purpose, a united vision for the future.
So it's like they're building a microcosm of a functioning society, a model for how people can cooperate and thrive, especially when times get tough. And they see technology as a tool to make that happen.
Exactly. They're not looking to replace those traditional community spaces with technology, but to enhance them. They want to use technology to strengthen existing bonds and create new ways for people to connect.
Okay, so less about replacing human connection and more about using technology to make it even stronger. I can get behind that.
Exactly. One of the ideas they're talking about is setting up a community radio station and a TV station.
A way to share the voices and stories of the island. I can see it now. Local news, interviews, updates on community events, all run by the people who live there. It's about building a shared identity, a sense of belonging.
It's about giving people a platform to connect and have those important conversations. And they're not stopping at traditional media. They're also talking about creating interactive online platforms, too.
So, a kind of digital town square, a virtual space where anyone can connect no matter where they are on the island. It's interesting because, we always hear about how isolating technology can be.
Right. And that's why it's so important to be intentional about how we design and use these tools. It's not enough just build a website or an app. You have to think about how to design those digital spaces to encourage interaction and create a sense of belonging.
It's about harnessing the power of technology without letting it control how we connect with each other. I always say a hammer can be used to build a house or tear it down, right? It's all about how you use it.
Exactly. It's about being aware of the potential downsides of technology while also recognizing the amazing things it can do to connect us in ways we never thought possible before.
This is already a lot to process. We've got climate change, space weather, these plans for a super high-tech, self-sufficient community, and we're just getting started.
We've only just scratched the surface. There's a lot more to explore here.
Well, let's keep going. I'm ready to dive deeper into this North Stradbroke Island plan and see what other fascinating ideas they've come up with.
One thing that really jumped out at me from this North Stradbroke plan was this whole idea of just-in-time learning with AI guides. It's like, imagine having your own personal tutor on hand whenever you need, ready to teach you anything right when you need it.
Okay, yeah, I need to hear more about this. It's one thing to say AI tutors, but how would that actually work in real life?
So picture this. You've got access to this massive library of knowledge and skills, right? But it's not just some overwhelming database. It's all personalized to you, to what you're doing at that moment and what you're trying to learn. Like, say you need to fix a solar panel. The AI guide, it walks you through it step by step, like you've got an expert right there with you. Or maybe you want to learn more about sustainable farming, the AI. It adjusts the information to your level, your learning style.
So it's not just about finding information, it's about making learning way more engaging, way more effective, and totally relevant to your everyday life.
Exactly. It's like democratizing knowledge, makes it accessible to anyone, no matter where they are, what their background is.
I don't know, there's a part of me that hears this and thinks, is this too good to be true? Are there downsides to relying on AI this much for learning?
It's the big question, right? Like, how do we know the AI guys are giving us accurate info, unboxed info? How do we stop people from becoming so reliant on them that they forget how to think for themselves?
Because learning isn't just about memorizing facts and figures, is it? It's about thinking critically, figuring out how to evaluate information and coming to your own conclusions.
Exactly. That's why it's so crucial to think of these AI guys as tools, really powerful tools, no doubt, but still just tools. We've got to be aware of their limitations and make sure we're using them in a way that complements our own intelligence, not replaces it.
It's funny, this whole AI guide thing, it reminds me of something else from those meeting notes. This concept of the aura of intelligence sounds seriously futuristic.
It does, doesn't it? From what I gathered, it seems to be talking about a whole new generation of AI assistants, not just like what we have now, but way more advanced.
Okay, how advanced are we talking? Give me the rundown.
Imagine an AI that doesn't just respond to commands, but actually learns and grows alongside you. It gets to know you, your preferences, and anticipates what you need, basically. It helps you navigate the world in this incredibly personalized way.
So less like a digital assistant, more like a digital companion almost. That's both fascinating and a little creepy, to be honest.
Yeah, I can see why you'd say that. It's getting into this territory where technology starts to blur the lines with actual human experience, right?
Makes you wonder what something like that would mean on a bigger scale, like for society as a whole.
It's the big question, isn't it? The meeting notes actually touch on this a bit. They stress the importance of making sure this kind of technology is developed responsibly. They talk about aligning it with human values, ensuring it promotes equality, that kind of thing.
It's a good reminder that technology by itself isn't good or bad, right? It's all about how we choose to use it.
Exactly. And the choices we make now, they're going to echo into the future. We have to approach this stuff with a sense of responsibility, with our critical thinking caps on.
You're preaching to the choir. But seriously, it's easy to get caught up in the shiny new tech and forget to ask the tough questions, the what-if questions.
Absolutely. We've got to ask ourselves, who's in control of this tech? Who benefits? And how do we ensure it's used for good?
Because if we're not careful, Those same tools that could be used to connect us, to empower us, they can also be used to divide, to manipulate, to control. It's a tightrope walk, that's for sure.
It is, but it's a conversation we need to be having. The future is being written right now with every decision we make.
Okay, so let's recap for a second. We've got climate change, space weather, plans for this incredible community, and now mind-blowing AI. My brain's doing backflips right now.
Take a breath. It's a lot to take in.
But I'm ready to start connecting some dots here. I mean, all these topics, they seem so different. What's the overarching narrative? What ties it all together?
Well, when you look at everything as a whole, you start to see this theme of interconnectedness popping up again and again.
Interconnectedness. Can you give me an example?
Sure. Remember that next End of the World excerpt? It talked about how interconnected all of Earth's systems are, how something happening out in space, like a solar flare, can have huge effects down here.
Okay, so interconnectedness on a global scale. Got it.
Then we have the Civilization of Sand document. It envisions this entire society built on interconnectedness, sustainable resources, renewable energy, cutting-edge technology, all working together.
Interconnectedness on a societal level.
Exactly. And of course, we can't forget those meeting notes. They hammered home the importance of community, of people coming together, supporting each other, working towards shared goals. That's interconnectedness on a human level.
So it's not just about making it through some potential disaster. It's about building a better future, right? One where we're living in harmony with each other, with the planet.
You got it. And these sources, they're suggesting that the way forward involves both technological innovation and community resilience. It's about using our creativity and intelligence to build solutions that benefit everyone, both humanity and the environment.
It's like a call to action, don't you think? Like a reminder that we're not powerless here. We actually have the ability to shape the future, to create a world that's more just, more sustainable, and more resilient.
Absolutely. The future isn't set in stone. It's up to us to decide what it looks like.
Honestly, I'm feeling this weird mix of anxiety and hope right now. It's a lot, but in a good way.
I know exactly what you mean. We're facing these huge, unprecedented challenges, but we've also got incredible tools at our fingertips, more knowledge than ever before. The big question is, what are we going to do with it? It really makes you think, doesn't it? Like, we're not just sitting around waiting to see what happens. Every choice we make, it's shaping the future, right?
It really hits home, that idea. And it makes you think about the legacy we're leaving behind. You know, what's it all going to look like for the generations that come after us? What are we handing them?
It's a big responsibility, no doubt about it. But that's the thing, it's also incredibly empowering. We're not just along for the ride. We're the ones holding the map, steering the ship.
Exactly. And, you know, those meeting notes we talked about, they offer this fascinating glimpse into what that kind of forward thinking can look like when it's put into action.
Yeah, like that North Stradbroke Island plan. It's not just about creating a community that can take care of itself. It's about designing a whole new model for a better future, one that's built on sustainability, resilience, human connection, all those things we've been talking about.
And I was like, they're building a prototype, you know, a working model for a new way of living on this planet, one that's actually designed for the challenges we're facing, that embraces innovation and using it to create real positive change.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And that's where this aura of intelligence concept gets really interesting. Imagine if we could actually harness the power of AI, but in a way that's aligned with our values, with what really matters.
That's when it could really change everything. I mean, imagine a world where AI isn't this thing to be afraid of, but a tool that helps us become smarter, more connected, better equipped to handle whatever comes our way.
Now, that's a vision of the future that's both exciting and, I'll admit, a little bit intimidating all at the same time.
For sure. It's a future where technology helps us become better versions of ourselves, where we use our knowledge and creativity to build a world that's fair, sustainable, a good place to be.
A world where we finally understand that being interconnected, it's not a weakness, it's our biggest strength.
You know, I'll be honest, at the beginning of this whole deep dive, I was a little overwhelmed by just how much ground we had to cover. Climate change, space weather, AI, community building, it felt like a lot.
And yet, look at us. The more we dug in, the more we saw how all those threads, they weave together, right? It all connects to tell this larger story.
It's a story about choices, about the challenges we've got to overcome, and the incredible potential that's right there waiting for us.
So what do you think? Are you ready to write the next chapter?
Absolutely. And to everyone listening, we want to hear from you. Head over to our website, share your thoughts on the episode, tell us what resonated with you, and hey, while you're at it, send us your own sources for our next deep dive. Until then, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and most importantly, keep your minds open.
Okay, are you ready for this? Because we are about to take a deep dive. Like, seriously deep. You know how we do.
Well, you did warn me. You said this one was a doozy.
It is. I've been digging into the stuff you sent over, and man, it's got my head spinning. We're talking about the future of civilization, the kind of tech that seems like science fiction, and even some wild climate scenarios that could seriously shake things up.
Yeah, it's heavy stuff for sure, but it's also incredibly exciting. These sources really make you think about the big questions, about how we can live sustainably,
Hmm.
about the limits of human ingenuity, and how we might need to adapt, maybe even radically, to not just survive, but actually thrive in the face of some pretty massive challenges.
No sugarcoating it, huh? I like it. So let's give our listeners a taste of what we're dealing with here. We've got a scientific analysis called 2022 Supplement to Next End of the World that doesn't shy away from potential global catastrophe.
Right, no punches pulled there.
Not at all. Then we've got Civilization of Sand, which lays out blueprints for, get this, building an entirely self-sufficient society from scratch, using only the resources of a single island.
Ambitious, to say the least.
That's an understatement. And as if that wasn't enough, we've also got GHARA Earth, which outlines plans for, well, I'm not even sure how to describe it, like a global community building project. It's wild. So where do we even begin with all this?
Honestly, I think the best place to start is with whatever caught your attention first. What really jumped out at you from all of this? What had you hooked?
You know, it's funny. It's that civilization of sand idea that's really stuck with me. I mean, come on, a whole civilization built from sand. It sounds like a movie.
It does, doesn't it?
But here's the thing. The document lays out this incredibly detailed, multi-phased plan. It's not just about surviving. It's about creating this truly advanced society. They even talk about reaching Type 1 on the Kardashev scale. Does that ring any bells?
The Kardashev scale, yeah. Now, I know that can sound a little intimidating, but it's actually a pretty cool concept. It's basically a way of measuring how advanced a civilization is based on how much energy it can use. A Type 1 civilization, like the one this document envisions, can harness all the energy available on its planet. That's the whole point.
All the energy on the entire planet. From sand. I mean, what's so special about sand that it could make that possible?
Well, there's sand, and then there's the sand they're talking about. This document focuses on North Stradbroke Island for a very specific reason. This island has a unique type of sand that's loaded with valuable minerals, things like quartz, ilmenite, rutile, zircon, and monazite.
Okay, I'll be honest. I'm more of a beach day kind of person than a mineral composition kind of person. What do those even mean?
Fair enough. Don't worry about the specifics. The main takeaway is that these minerals, which this particular type of sand is full of, can be used to create a crazy amount of stuff. We're talking solar panels, batteries, even components for spacecraft, all from sand.
Whoa, hold on. Spacecraft components from sand. Now you're speaking my language. That's the kind of futuristic tech that makes your jaw drop. Makes you wonder what we could accomplish if we started looking at the world around us, even the ordinary stuff like sand, in totally new ways.
Right, and that's exactly the kind of thinking this document is all about, challenging our assumptions and pushing us to see the potential in what we might overlook. But it's not just about the tech. The Civilization of Sand plan also highlights how important things like community, culture, and ethics are in building a successful civilization. They even use this phrase, joyful, responsible abundance. What do you think about that?
Joyful, responsible abundance. I like it. It's about finding that sweet spot, right?
Mm-hmm.
We need to progress and innovate, but not by trashing the planet or leaving people behind. How does that idea, the joyful, responsible abundance, actually work in the Civilization of Sand plan? What does it look like?
Well, think about it like this. They talk about using local resources, like the special sand, in a way that's both sustainable and gives back. So we're talking about sustainable agriculture, producing more than enough energy, even preparing to settle on other planets. And they emphasize how important it is to have strong communities where everyone feels connected and supported.
So it's not just about getting by. It's about creating a life that's good for everyone, for the planet, for the future. Which brings me to something else that really struck me as I was going through these documents, that whole idea of potential global catastrophes that you mentioned earlier, especially in the 2022 supplement to Next End of the World. They paint this picture of the Earth's climate being way more cyclical than we realize, prone to these massive dramatic swings. And it got me thinking, we hear so much about global warming, but what if we're actually headed for the opposite? What if things are about to get a lot colder?
Now, that's a question that often throws people for a loop. We tend to think of climate change as this one-way street getting hotter and hotter, but the reality is way more complicated than that. The Earth has a long and dramatic history of climate shifts. This document really challenges our assumptions about what the future holds and the direction climate change might take. What were some of the things that jumped out at you in that document?
Well, for one, they talk about the Earth's magnetic field getting weaker, which has happened before other major climate shifts. And then there's that whole thing about the Little Ice Age, which happened just a few centuries ago. Turns out that wasn't even the coldest it's been recently. Blew my mind.
It's true. It's easy to forget that our planet has seen it all. And those past shifts, those times when the climate went haywire, they weren't just abstract events. They shaped civilizations, they forced migrations, and they fundamentally changed how humans interacted with the planet.
It makes you wonder, are we on the brink of another one of those shifts? And could be triggered by, well, us, by the very global warming we're so worried about.
It's a tangled web, that's for sure. So many factors are at play, but what this document really makes you think about is that what we consider normal climate conditions, that might actually be the exception, not the rule.
It's like that mind-blowing fact they mentioned about the Sahara Desert being green and lush just 6,000 years ago. The Sahara. Green. You've got to be kidding me.
It sounds crazy, but the evidence is there. Imagine the civilizations that might have thrived in that environment, the stories they told, the way they lived. It really makes you question everything you thought you knew about the planet's past and its possible future.
It's like that saying, the only constant is change, right? And we, as humans, we have to adapt, even when it's unexpected, even when it's hard. It's the key to survival.
100%. And that brings us right back to the Civilization of Sand plan and how important it is to be resourceful and adaptable, especially when we're talking about a future that feels so uncertain. If we can figure out how to thrive using the resources of just one island, imagine what else we're capable of.
So we've got this potential global cooling event possibly on the way, and we've got this crazy, ambitious plan to build a self-sufficient, sustainable civilization out of sand. Like a recipe for a blockbuster movie, but instead of battling aliens, we're up against climate change. What else did you find in these documents about how these threads might connect?
Well, that's where the GAJRA Earth document comes in. And you're right, it does seem like a bit of a curveball at first. We're talking about global catastrophes and futuristic civilizations, and then, bam, we're suddenly trying to save a bowling club.
I know, right? It had me scratching my head for a minute, like, okay, where are we going with this? But then it clicked.
It did, didn't it? It's not really about the bowling, though, is it? It's about something much bigger. The document frames this Point Lookout Bowls Club as this kind of microcosm of the larger community. It's a place where people from all walks of life can come together, hang out, connect, And their big idea is to revitalize this place, make it a real hub of activity, and use that as a model for building stronger, more resilient communities on a larger scale.
So they're starting small, but thinking big picture. I like it. But their plans for this bowling club, they're not exactly your average Friday Night League stuff, are they?
Not even close. They're talking about transforming this vacant lot next to the club into this amazing multi-use space, perfect for all sorts of beach sports, volleyball, cricket, you name it. They want to have an outdoor cinema, markets, festivals, a brand new clubhouse, the works. This is going to be a real gathering place, a place where the whole community can come together and enjoy themselves.
It does sound pretty incredible, and I get it. Creating that sense of community, that's going to be essential, especially we're heading into uncertain times. But let's be real, a lot of these community organizations, like bowling clubs, they're barely hanging on as it is. How do they plan on overcoming those challenges?
That's the thing. They address those challenges head on. They talk about how tough it is to find volunteers who are really committed, how to generate enough money to keep the doors open, even just finding staff to manage everything. It's a constant struggle. But their solution, it's pretty clever. They propose creating a cooperative model where struggling businesses and clubs join forces, pool their resources, and become something much stronger together.
Strength in numbers, I like it.
Exactly. But wait, there's more. They also talk about integrating AI-powered learning tools. Imagine having AI guides that could provide real-time training and support for volunteers or help with the day-to-day operations and make everything run more smoothly. That could be revolutionary for these kinds of organizations.
We started talking about building a civilization from sand, and now we're talking about AI and bowling clubs. It's amazing how it all connects back to this idea of human ingenuity, our ability to adapt and find solutions to really complex problems.
And let's not forget that even with all these big global issues looming, like climate change, there's still so much we can do right now in our own communities to make things better, to make them stronger.
And maybe, just maybe, by building those connections, that spirit of, what was that phrase again? Joyful, responsible abundance.
Love it.
Maybe that's how we create a future that's not just about survival, but about truly thriving together.
You said it. But we haven't even touched on some of the really cool scientific stuff in these documents yet, like that one about space weather, the Space Weather Hub pseudocode. That one really piqued my curiosity. They outline this whole system for monitoring and analyzing space weather data in real time, using AI and machine learning to find patterns and even predict how it might impact us here on Earth.
Okay, you're talking about solar flares, geomagnetic storms, all that, right?
You're right.
I'll admit that's where I need a bit of a helping hand. Why is it so important to keep tabs on space weather anyway?
It's more than just a cool thing to track, believe me. Space weather can have a huge impact on us, especially with how much we rely on technology these days. We're talking potential disruptions to communication systems, power grids going down, even problems with satellite navigation. A really bad solar storm, it could bring our whole world to a standstill.
Okay, now you're making it sound like a disaster movie. But I get it. Our entire world is so dependent on technology now, a big space weather event could really mess things up.
Exactly. But it's not just about avoiding disaster. The document also suggests that if we can understand space weather better, we can learn more about how our planet's systems work and how everything is connected. They even talk about possible links between solar activity and things like earthquakes and volcanic eruptions.
Oh, hold on. Are you telling me there might be a connection between what's happening on the sun and what's going on deep inside the Earth? That's wild.
I know, right? It just shows how interconnected everything is, even on a planetary scale. And the more we learn, the more we realize how much we still don't know. But that's what makes this whole deep dive so fascinating, wouldn't you say?
It really is mind-blowing. The sun, earthquakes, volcanoes, even our technology in a bowling club. It's like this giant web of connections. But how do we even start to get a handle on something as complex as space weather? It seems so, I don't know, out there.
Well, that's where I think the Space Weather Hub pseudocode document gets really interesting. One of their ideas is to create this cosmic VR experience. Imagine strapping on a VR headset and suddenly you're standing on the surface of the sun. You can see solar flares erupting right in front of you.
Okay, now that's just cool. So, yeah. Seriously, though, what an awesome way to make something as abstract as space weather feel real and immediate.
Right. It's all about making learning immersive and engaging. And get this, they want to use real-time data from the Space Weather Hub to power these VR experiences. So it wouldn't just be some pre-programmed simulation. You'd be seeing how solar events are unfolding at that very moment and how they're interacting with Earth's magnetic field, all in real time. It would be an incredible tool for education and research.
I can only imagine. It'd be like having a front row seat to the cosmos. But let's be honest, not everyone's going to be rocking a VR headset anytime soon.
Yeah.
What else did you find out about how this Space Weather Hub might actually work in the real world?
One thing that stood out to me was how much they emphasize collaboration. They talk about pulling data from all kinds of sources, satellites, ground-based observatories, even geological studies. They specifically mention something called low shear velocity zones.
Okay, you're going to have to break that one down for me. Low shear velocity zones. I'm not sure I've ever even heard that phrase before.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful. Basically, it refers to these zones deep within the Earth's mantle where seismic waves, the waves generated by earthquakes, they travel slower than in the surrounding areas. Scientists think these zones are really important for something called mantle convection, which is basically how heat moves around within the Earth. And that process, that mantle convection, it drives all sorts of things like the movement of tectonic plates and even volcanic eruptions.
So we're talking about something happening hundreds of kilometers beneath our feet. What does that have to do with space weather? It seems like a bit of a stretch.
That's the million-dollar question, right? The document suggests that there might be a link between what the sun's doing and what's happening in these low shear velocity zones. They're still figuring it out, but it's definitely an area of active research.
So you're telling me that the sun's activity could be influencing what's going on deep inside the Earth. Now that is incredible.
It just goes to show you it's all connected, and the more we discover, the more we realize how much we don't yet understand. But that's what makes all of this so exciting to explore, right?
Totally. We've covered so much ground. Potential global cooling events, building a civilization out of sand, revitalizing a bowling club, and even diving into the mysteries of space weather. It's like we've taken this whirlwind tour of the future, with all its potential pitfalls and its incredible possibilities.
And for me, what ties it all together is that theme of human ingenuity, our resilience, and our never-ending capacity for hope.
Yeah.
We might not have all the answers, but we're asking the right questions, and we're finding incredibly innovative ways to tackle some seriously complex challenges.
And maybe even more importantly, we're not just sitting back and letting the future happen to us. We're actively shaping it, whether it's through scientific exploration, technological advances, or simply by strengthening our communities. We have the power to create a future that's more sustainable, more just, more equitable, and hopefully a whole lot more joyful.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So, to everyone listening, we'll leave you with this. What captures your imagination? What part of this resonates most with you? The future is still unwritten, and we're all writing it together.
This has been an incredible journey, and we're so glad you joined us. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, keep dreaming big. All right, listener, you ready for this?
Always up for a deep dive. What are we tackling today?
Today, we are going deep on the future of civilization. No, seriously, like really big picture stuff.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How big picture are we talking?
We're talking solar storms, subterranean cities, and even some philosophical musings on building a better world. Big enough for ya.
Whoa, that's a lot to unpack. I'm in. Where do we start?
Well, let's start with something that might surprise you. Did you know that ordinary sand could be the key to, like, building a civilization from scratch?
Okay, now you got my attention. I'll bite. How do we go from sandcastles to civilization?
One of the sources dives deep into the potential of mineral-rich sands, particularly those found on North Stradbroke Island.
North Stradbroke Island. Interesting. What's so special about their sand?
Apparently, it's a gold mine. Well, not literally. But these sands have the building blocks for, get this, advanced ceramics, solar panels, and even components for nuclear technology. Wild, right?
Wait, hold on. Are we talking about turning beaches into factories?
Not exactly. It's more about recognizing the potential of resources we often overlook.
Yeah.
You know, like seeing the forest for the trees, or in this case, the civilization for the sand. This source argues these sands could be crucial in building a self-sufficient civilization, especially if, things go south and our usual resources and supply chains are disrupted.
Okay, that makes sense. But why the emphasis on self-sufficiency? Is this where the whole doomsday prepping aspect comes in?
It's a recurring theme in these sources, for sure. One of them talks about a solar micronova event, a massive release of energy from the sun, basically, that could have some serious consequences for our planet.
Okay, so we're talking solar flares, electromagnetic pulses, the work. That sounds pretty intense.
Right. While it might sound like something straight out of a sci-fi flick, this source presents some compelling evidence suggesting these events aren't as far-fetched as we might think. They really hammer home the cyclical nature of these solar events and how understanding these cycles is crucial to, well, not getting caught off guard.
So it's not just about predicting the apocalypse, but about understanding the forces that shape our universe, right?
Exactly. And that brings us to one of the more, shall we say, intriguing proposals, building subterranean eco-cities, as a way to safeguard humanity if things get really hairy on the surface.
Okay, going underground. Tell me more about that.
Picture this. A self-sufficient city, totally underground, powered by geothermal energy and utilizing some seriously advanced tech like hydroponics and life support systems to create a livable ecosystem.
It sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi novel, but could it actually work? I mean, wouldn't people go stir crazy living underground all the time?
Good question. The source addresses that. They suggest these underground cities would need to be carefully designed to incorporate natural light, open spaces, and even virtual reality simulations to, create a sense of connection to the outside world.
Yeah.
It's not just about survival. It's about creating a thriving community that can weather any storm, literally.
That does make it seem a bit less claustrophobic. But if we're talking about being prepared for events like this, how would we even know when to head underground?
This is where it gets really interesting. One source proposes this idea of a space weather news hub.
A space weather news hub? I've never heard of that before. What is it?
Imagine a global network that's constantly monitoring solar activity, seismic events, even changes in the Earth's electromagnetic field. Essentially, a high-tech early warning system for potential disasters.
So, like a global watchdog, keeping an eye on the cosmos for any potential threats. That's pretty impressive.
Exactly. They could potentially give us a heads up about solar storms, earthquakes, and other events that could disrupt, well, everything and give us valuable time to prepare. But it's not just about predicting disasters.
Oh, What else could it do?
This source suggests this space weather news hub could also be used to get this monitor the solar system and even the local universe.
Whoa, what would we be monitoring for exactly?
Think. Searching for signs of extraterrestrial life or other astronomical phenomena, we're not just talking about surviving, but about expanding our understanding of the universe and, maybe finding some cosmic neighbors along the way.
Wow, that's a pretty big leap from surviving solar flares to finding ET.
Right. It's about recognizing that we're part of something much, much larger than ourselves, and that our future is fundamentally linked to the cosmos. It's a pretty awe-inspiring thought, don't you think?
Definitely makes you realize how much we still don't know and how much there is to explore.
You're talking about space weather, subterranean cities, cosmic watchdogs. It's a lot, right?
Yeah.
But, there's more to the future than just bracing for impact. What about building a better world? Not just surviving the end of the world as we know it.
That's where I think this whole Godra Earth concept comes in. Imagine a world built on, like, joyful, responsible abundance. A world where technology isn't just about survival, but about connecting with each other and building a better future.
Gadra Earth. It's got a ring to it, right?
Hmm.
But how do we go from a cool name to a real thing?
One source lays out these core values. They've even got an acronym for it, GAJRA. It stands for Global Association for Joyful, Responsible Abundance on Earth.
Okay, I see what they did there with the acronym. Clever.
Mhm.
But acronyms aside, what does this actually look like? How do we live Gadra Earth?
Think of it as this ongoing process, striving to make the world a little bit better every single day, embracing innovation, working together, and respecting both humanity and the environment. One source actually compared it to this idea of protopia, which is like we're not aiming for some perfect utopia, just always moving forward, always progressing.
I like that. Progress over perfection feels much more doable.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we track that progress? How do we know if we're actually moving towards protopia?
One source suggested this idea of values mapping, basically developing ways to measure not just like economic stuff, but also things like social well-being, environmental health, even spiritual growth. It's about measuring what truly matters: happiness, equality, our connection to nature.
Makes sense. What's the point of all this technological advancement if it doesn't make life better for everyone, right? But this Gadra Earth being a global association, are we talking about a new world government?
Not necessarily. It's more about fostering that sense of global citizenship, recognizing that we're all connected, all sharing this planet, and our actions have these ripple effects. They even make this beautiful analogy to a Gadra. It's a traditional Indian flower garland symbolizing the interconnectedness of everything.
Okay, I love that image. But let's bring it back down to Earth for a sec. Literally, we were talking about this potential solar micronova threat and these subterranean eco-cities. How does Gadra Earth play into that whole scenario?
That's where things get really interesting. These sources suggest that surviving a catastrophe, that's just step one. The real challenge is what comes next: rebuilding a civilization that truly embodies those Gadra Earth values. A civilization that's not just technologically advanced, but socially just, environmentally sustainable, and even spiritually fulfilling.
So it's not just about physical survival, it's about cultural and spiritual renewal too.
Exactly. It's about learning from the past and using those lessons to build a future that's, well, worthy of the name Gadra Earth.
Using a crisis as a catalyst for positive change, I'm into it. But let's be real here. Even if we build these incredible underground cities and weather the storm, how do we avoid repeating the mistakes that got us into trouble in the first place?
That is the million-dollar question, right? And the sources suggest technology alone isn't going to cut it. We need a real shift in our values, our priorities, how we interact with each other, and the planet. One source even suggested developing some kind of ethical code for Gadra Earth, guiding principles to ensure we're actually living by the values we're talking about.
An ethical code for humanity. Ambitious much. But I get it, especially with technology changing everything so fast. But let's circle back to this Space Weather News Hub for a sec. It's a huge undertaking. How would it even work in reality?
This source gets into the nitty-gritty, actually. They envision this network of satellites, ground-based sensors, even everyday people contributing data to a central hub. This hub would use crazy advanced algorithms, artificial intelligence, the whole shebang, to analyze all that data, identify potential threats, and issue early warnings.
Like a global neighborhood watch for space weather. I like it. But if we're also talking about monitoring for, extraterrestrial life, wouldn't that take an insane amount of data?
Totally. But that's where the AI comes in. These systems are built to crunch numbers on a scale we can't even fathom. They can spot patterns and make predictions way faster and more accurately than humans ever could.
So we've got a team of superpowered digital astronomers working around the clock. Reassuring, definitely.
But what about the cost of all of this? Building a space weather news hub sounds, well, expensive.
This source argues that the cost of doing nothing, of not being prepared, is far greater. Think about the potential economic fallout, the social chaos, not to mention the human cost if a major solar storm were to hit us unprepared. Good point. Sometimes you have to spend money to save money, or lives for that matter.
Exactly. Plus, they suggest this space weather hub could have benefits beyond disaster preparedness, too. Tracking space debris, monitoring climate change, even helping us explore space more safely and effectively.
Okay, so it's an investment in our future, not just a reaction to a threat. I like that. But let's shift gears for a moment, talk about something a little more, shall we say, down to earth, literally. This whole thing about expanding the Bowls Club on North Stradbroke Island. It might seem kind of random, but I think it's actually a really important piece of this whole puzzle.
I agree. It does seem kind of funny at first, talking about subterranean cities and bowls clubs in the same breath. But I think it speaks to this bigger idea that building a better world, it's not just about high-tech solutions, it's also about community, belonging, those human connections.
Right. And this Bowls Club project, it's about taking this, I don't know, kind of struggling Bowls Club and transforming it into this vibrant community hub.
Exactly. They're talking about adding beach volleyball courts, cricket pitches, even an outdoor cinema. The goal is to create a space where people can just hang out, connect, and enjoy being part of a community.
It's like taking a traditional gathering place and giving it a 21st century upgrade. But it's not just about adding cool new stuff. The source also emphasizes community ownership. Like, the people who live there are the ones calling the shots.
Absolutely. They even talk about using something called a gamified democracy model to make decisions about the club's future.
Hold up. Gamified democracy. Now you're just messing with me. What does that even mean?
Okay, so imagine using, like, game mechanics, points, rewards, that sort of thing, to make civic engagement more fun. Like, people could earn points for voting in club elections, volunteering, or participating in events.
That's actually a really cool idea. It's about making it rewarding to be involved in your community.
Exactly. And it ties back to that whole Godra Earth vision of creating a society where everyone has a voice and feels empowered to make a difference.
So this Bulls Club, it's like this little microcosm of a bigger idea, a small example of how we can start building a better world right now without waiting for a disaster to force our hand.
Exactly. It's about taking action, no matter how small, to create the kind of world we want to live in.
We've got telescopes connecting us to the cosmos, sustainable cities to ride out the storms, a supercharged Bulls Club for community building. Anything else we should add to our Godra Earth toolkit?
You know, it might sound kind of cheesy, but one source really emphasized the importance of hope as this driving force for positive change.
Hope? That does sound a bit vague, even for us.
Right. But they're actually talking about a very specific kind of hope. Not just wishful thinking, but this active, engaged hope. A hope that's rooted in this belief that we actually have the power to make a difference.
So it's not just about hoping for a better future, it's about believing we can create it.
Exactly. And they argue that this kind of hope, it's contagious. When we see people taking action, working together, making a difference, it inspires us to do the same.
Hope as a source of collective action. Now that's an idea worth spreading.
Totally. It's easy to get bogged down in all the challenges and uncertainty, but at the end of the day, we have a choice. We can choose to be overwhelmed by the problems, or we can choose to focus on the solutions and approach the future with a sense of hope and determination.
Back again, listener, and honestly, my head's still spinning a bit from all this.
Yeah.
Building new civilization. It's a tall order, but after all this research, I'm feeling, I don't know, cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, it's a lot to process. It'd be easy to get stuck in the what ifs, the sheer scale of it all. But what I find really refreshing about these sources is that sense of agency. We're not just along for the ride, we actually get to shape the future.
Absolutely. And speaking of shaping the future, there was this one idea that really stuck with me. Building telescopes on North Stradbroke Island, using those local materials we talked about. It might seem small compared to, subterranean cities and all, but there's something powerful about that imagery.
Oh, it's more than just imagery. It's a statement. Building telescopes, it means we're still looking up, still striving to understand our place in the universe. That sense of exploration, of discovery, it's at the heart of that whole Godra Earth idea.
Totally. But realistically, building telescopes takes serious tech, right?
Yeah.
Expertise. Can that really be done with just local resources?
The source acknowledges those challenges for sure, but they also offer a pretty practical approach. Start small, maybe focus on simpler telescope designs initially, gradually build up the complexity, the capability over time.
So take that first step, learn as you go, and build momentum.
Exactly. Plus, they emphasize collaboration. Imagine local craftspeople, astronomers, engineers all working side by side, sharing their knowledge. It's community-driven innovation in action.
A perfect example of that global association in action, not just coming together to survive, but to explore, to learn, to push the boundaries of what's possible.
Right. And they even talk about creating educational programs, stargazing events, bringing the community together around this shared sense of wonder. It's about more than just the telescopes. It's about fostering a culture of curiosity.
Love it. All right, so we've got telescopes connecting us to the cosmos, sustainable cities for weathering the storms, and a revitalized Bowls Club as our community hub. Anything else we need in our Gadra Earth starter kit?
This might sound obvious, but one source really emphasized something we've been circling around this whole time: hope. And not just any hope, but a really active, engaged hope. The
Mm.
kind that's fueled by action, by that belief that we can actually create a better future.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed, cynical even, with all these potential global catastrophes looming. But you're right, this source argues that this sense of hope, of believing we can make a difference, that's absolutely crucial.
It's not about ignoring the problems, but about facing them head on with that sense of purpose. Understanding that even our smallest actions can have a ripple effect.
So we're embracing the pragmatic and the idealistic, preparing for the worst while working towards the best.
Exactly. These sources don't offer some magical solution, no guaranteed happy ending, but they do give us a framework, a set of values to guide us. And maybe most importantly, a reminder that we're not just along for the ride. We have the power to shape the future.
That's what I love about these deep dives. They don't shy away from the big questions, the complexities. If anything, they push us to lean in, to get curious, to embrace the unknown, and figure out how we can make a difference.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And on that note, listener, we'll leave you with this. What seeds of hope will you plant today? What actions, big or small, will you take to create the future you want to see? This whole Gadra Earth thing, it starts with each of us.
Okay, so get this. Ready for this one? We're going deep on sandcastles.
Sandcastles.
Well, not just sandcastles, but sandcastles that could be the foundation for space-age cities. I know, wild ride.
Sounds pretty out there.
It's going to be a wild ride.
Mm.
We're talking North Stradbroke Island.
Stratty.
Stratty, that gorgeous slice of Australia. And it's weirdly powerful sand.
And there's some real-world stuff here, too. It's not just sci-fi. There's a whole book called Civilization of Sand that lays out a plan.
A plan for what?
Well, it's a plan for building entirely self-sufficient civilizations using everyday resources.
Like,
You guessed it, sand. But this isn't your average beach sand. This stuff's special.
how special are we talking?
Special enough to protect us from solar micronovas.
Hold on, wait.
Yeah.
Solar micronovas,
Yeah.
like mini explosions on the sun.
Yeah, mini explosions, but big impact.
Yeah, they can fry our tech, right?
Exactly. They can disrupt power grids, wipe out communications, even mess with satellites,
Yeah.
all from a sudden burst of energy from the sun.
Okay, so that sounds bad.
It can be, and some people think we're overdue for a big one.
Really?
Yeah, a book called The Next End of the World really digs into it.
The next end of the world, huh?
Yeah, cheek tip.
Title.
Right. And they've got some unsettling predictions about this whole micronova thing.
Okay, I'm officially nervous.
Don't worry, there's more to the story.
Oh, good. I need some good news right about now.
Well, remember Stratty and that special sand?
Yeah, the Sandcastle Space Cities.
Right. Well, Civilization of Sand says we can use that sand to build incredible underground eco-cities.
Underground cities made of sand. Is that even, like, possible?
It's possible. And that's where things get really interesting with Sibelco.
Sibelco, the sand mining company that was on Stratty.
Yeah, that's Sibelco.
They're gone now, though, right?
They are. They went offline a while back, and it might be a good thing.
How's that?
Well, it opens up space for a new approach, a more sustainable way of doing things, like what this guy, Luke Hayes, is proposing.
Who cares? Who's that?
He's this innovator, really pushing for a change in how we think about mining. He calls it eco-subterranean mining,
Oh.
all about minimal environmental impact.
Eco-subterranean mining.
I know, right?
So we're using Stratty's resources to build these futuristic cities.
Exactly, but we're doing it sustainably. And get this, he wants to use those resources for hyper-local manufacturing. right there on Stratty.
So we're not shipping out raw materials.
Nope. Building it all on site.
Well,
And Hayes isn't stopping there. He wants Stratty to be a clean energy hub.
like solar panels.
Solar, wind, even wave power.
So an island powered by nature, making cutting-edge tech.
All nestled safely underground.
Okay, now I'm really hooked, so spill the beans. What makes Stratty sand so special?
Not magic, but close. It's packed with minerals, quartz, ilmenite, rutile, zircon, and monazite. They're all vital for building this self-sufficient, high-tech civilization.
Okay, so no magic sand.
Not that we know of.
Okay, good. So break it down for me. What's so great about each mineral?
Well, let's start with quartz. Pure silicon gold, and I mean that literally. It's what we need to make super efficient solar panels. Imagine powering an entire city from the sand beneath our feet.
Wow, that's insane. Okay, so quartz is our energy source.
Yeah.
What about ilmenite and rutile? What do they do?
Those are our titanium sources.
Titanium.
Yeah, titanium, the superhero of metals. Strong, lightweight, and doesn't corrode. Perfect for building structures, machines, even vehicles for these underground eco-cities.
So titanium walls, titanium cars,
Yeah.
a whole titanium world underground.
It's pretty wild to think about.
Definitely outside the box.
Ah,
Or inside the earth, I guess.
exactly. All right, what's next?
What else is in our sand-powered shopping list?
Next up, zircon. This one's all about energy. We can use it for nuclear applications.
Nuclear, like power plants.
Yeah, but safer ones. They use zirconium from zircon to generate power cleanly and efficiently.
Nuclear reactors underground. Are you sure that's a good idea?
Civilization of Sand talks about it, and they're all about safety. They focus on a specific type of reactor that's considered much safer than traditional ones. And they're big on responsible waste management. They even mention using thorium-based reactors, which are even safer and produce less radioactive waste.
Okay, so thorium-based reactors.
Got it. And they'd be deep underground with tons of safety protocols.
Okay, so we've got solar power from quartz, titanium buildings from ilmenite and rutile, and maybe even nuclear power from zircon. That's a pretty good start for an underground city. What about monazite? What's its role?
Monazite is our high-tech secret weapon.
Ooh, secret weapon. I like it.
It's a source of rare earth elements, which are essential for everything high-tech. Powerful magnets in electric motors, the electronics in our smartphones, even future energy solutions.
So we can get all that from sand, energy, construction, high-tech materials. Mind-blowing.
Yeah.
But you mentioned space weather before. Why is that important for our sand-based civilization?
Ah, yes. Space weather. Remember those solar micronovas we talked about?
It's sun explosions.
Yeah. They're a huge threat to our way of life as we know it.
I'm starting to see where you're going with this.
But these underground eco-cities, they might just be our best defense.
How so?
Think about it. Being underground already shields us from radiation and those electromagnetic pulses from the sun.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But Civilization of Sand goes further. They propose redundant systems, shielded infrastructure, radiation-hardened tech, basically a fortress designed to withstand a cosmic tantrum.
So it's more than just digging a hole and hiding.
Way more. It's about resilience, sustainability, and using those rare earth elements from monazite to make tech that can handle solar radiation.
So redundant systems, shielded infrastructure, and radiation-hardened technology. We're prepping for a cosmic apocalypse.
It's better to be safe than sorry, right? But it's not just about survival.
It's not.
Civilization of Sand talks about making these cities more than just bunkers. They envision underground parks, simulated nature, advanced lighting to mimic day and night.
Wow. So not just surviving, but thriving underground.
Exactly. A vibrant, self-sustaining community, not just a shelter.
That's amazing. But wouldn't there be challenges living underground all the time? What about, like, social dynamics, governance, the psychology of it all?
You're right. Those are all big things to consider. And Civilization of Sand doesn't ignore them. They talk about new models of community governance based on collaboration and technology. And they emphasize art, culture, and education to keep a society thriving.
So it's not just about technology. It's a whole new way of life.
Right. A whole new way of life adapted to a unique environment.
Fascinating. But where does Luke Hayes fit into all this? Is he building these cities right now?
Not exactly, but his work with eco-subterranean mining and hyperlocal manufacturing could be seen as a pilot program, a way to show that we can start building this more sustainable, resilient future now.
So Stratty's a testing ground for these ideas.
It could be a model for a future where we can face those scary solar micronovas head on.
Wow, so maybe sandcastles, solar storms, and underground cities aren't so different after all.
Maybe not. It's all part of a bigger story about adapting and thriving in the face of new challenges.
That's a lot to think about. And we're just getting started. We haven't even gotten into the details of how these eco-cities would work, the day-to-day life, all that.
Yeah, there's so much more to explore.
We'll definitely have to dive deeper into that after a quick.
It's crazy to think that the key to surviving like a cosmic event could be right under our feet.
I know, right? It's wild. But how do we actually go from sand to like a full-blown city underground?
Civilization of Sand gets into the specifics.
Mhm.
It all starts with those minerals, remember, like quartz. That's our clean energy superstar.
Right. Quartz for solar panels.
Exactly. And the book says that Strati's quartz is, like, special. It can make super efficient solar panels.
Wait, even better than what we have now?
Yeah, potentially. Imagine fields of these things soaking up the sun, powering a whole city below.
That's a pretty awesome picture. Okay, so we have energy. But what about, building the city itself? How do you make skyscrapers out of sand? Or, I guess underscrapers is more accurate.
That's where ilmenite and rutile come in, our titanium sources.
Right, titanium. Super strong.
Not just strong, lightweight too, and it won't corrode. Perfect for building underground.
So titanium beams, titanium walls, even titanium furniture.
Why not? Civilization of Sand even suggests using 3D printing. Imagine printing houses, tunnels, even art, all from titanium made from Strati's sand.
Whoa, 3D printed titanium cities. That sounds like a sci-fi movie. But
Yeah.
wouldn't all that 3D printing take a ton of energy?
It would, and that's where zircon comes in, remember? Zircon for nuclear reactors.
Hey, the thorium ones.
Exactly. Thorium reactors are way safer, and they produce less radioactive waste.
Still, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with nuclear reactors being underground. What if something goes wrong?
That's a fair concern. But Civilization of Sand is all about safety. Multiple layers of protocols, backup systems, the latest technology, and remember those rare earth elements from monazite? We can use those to make electronics that can withstand radiation.
Okay, so we're covered on all fronts. Power, building materials, high-tech components, all from sand. Incredible. But what about the actual, living stuff? Food, water, air. You need that to survive.
Absolutely. And Civilization of Sand has a plan for that, too. They talk about huge underground farms powered by those awesome solar panels, maybe even supplemented by nuclear energy.
Underground farms. What would they grow down there?
All kinds of stuff. Hydroponics, aquaponics, all these systems that are super efficient and don't waste anything.
So fresh veggies, maybe even fish, all grown underground.
Yep. And those rare earth elements, they come in handy again. We can use them to make lights that mimic sunlight so plants can grow even without the sun.
That's so cool. So a self-sustaining food system powered by clean energy. Awesome. But what about water? Can you make water out of sand?
Not exactly. But Civilization of Sand says we could tap into underground aquifers, which are like natural water reservoirs. And since Strati is an island, we could also desalinate seawater, using solar power to turn it into fresh water.
So water from below and water from the ocean, all sustainably sourced. This is starting to sound less like a bunker and more like, I don't know, a luxury eco-resort.
I know, right? But let's be realistic, there are going to be challenges. What about things like waste disposal, keeping the air clean, and like how would people handle living underground all the time?
Yeah, good point.
Civilization of Sand doesn't shy away from those issues. They talk about high-tech waste recycling, air filtration systems, and even creating simulated natural environments.
Simulated natural environments. What does that even mean?
Think underground parks with special lighting that looks like sunlight, open spaces for recreation. They even suggest using virtual reality to connect people with nature.
So it's not just about surviving. It's about creating a place where people can actually thrive, even underground.
Exactly. It's a holistic approach, thinking about the whole picture, not just the technology.
This is such a fascinating concept, but it still feels kind of far off, How do we even start moving towards this kind of future?
Well, that's where Luke Hayes and his work come in. His whole thing with eco-subterranean mining and hyper-local manufacturing could be a first step, a way to test these ideas out in the real world.
So Strati could be like a pilot program for these eco-cities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A model for a future where we can survive and even thrive in the face of those solar micronovas.
So maybe we shouldn't be so quick to dismiss those sandcastles after all.
Maybe not. They could be a symbol of something much bigger. A new way of thinking about how we live and how we interact with our planet.
It's definitely a lot to consider. And it brings up some really important questions. Like, How do we balance technological progress with protecting the environment? Can we create a truly sustainable future without sacrificing the natural world?
Big questions. Really big questions. And those are exactly the kinds of questions we need to be asking ourselves as we dive deeper into this whole civilization of sand idea.
Okay, so we've talked about straty sand, the potential for these eco-cities, and those solar micronovas. That's a lot to process.
It is, and there's always more to consider, right? Like the environmental impact. We can't just ignore that.
Exactly. Straty is beautiful, and there's so much wildlife.
Uh,
Can we really build these cities without messing that up?
Well, that's where Luke Hayes's ideas come in. Eco-subterranean mining, remember. It's designed to minimize impact on the surface.
So less digging giant holes and more like careful excavation.
Right. And Civilization of Sand talks about taking it a step further. They talk about restoring the environment after mining, maybe even making it better than before.
So not just minimizing harm, but actually improving things. That's ambitious.
It is. It's a different way of thinking about how we use resources. Not just taking, but giving back too.
Makes sense. But even if we solve the environmental stuff, there's still the question of, like, how do these cities work as authorities? Millions of people living underground. How do you create a sense of community in that kind of setting?
That's a big one. And Civilization of Sand has some interesting ideas. They propose a system of governance based on collaboration, using technology to connect everyone.
So like high-tech town hall meetings.
Sort of, but it's more than that. They also talk about the importance of education, creativity, and social connection. Imagine cultural centers, virtual reality experiences that let you experience nature, all kinds of ways to learn and grow.
It sounds pretty utopian. A society where technology is used to connect people and make life better, not just to survive.
It's definitely a hopeful vision, and it's important to remember this is a long-term goal. We're not going to build these cities overnight.
Right. It's more about changing how we think about the future.
Exactly. Exploring new possibilities, challenging our assumptions.
Maybe that's the biggest takeaway here. It's not just about sand or solar storms or even these underground cities. It's about reimagining what's possible.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's about finding solutions in unexpected places, even something as simple as sand.
It's been a mind-blowing conversation. It's made me think about the future in a whole new way. And who knows, maybe someday we'll be looking back at this moment, remembering when we first started imagining this different kind of world, a world where we not only survive, but thrive, even in the face of incredible challenges. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. We'll catch you next time for another fascinating exploration into the unknown. All right, so get this. We've got North Stradbroke Island. They call it Straty. It's this beautiful sand island off the coast of Australia. And for years, it was known for these mineral-rich sands.
Right.
This company, Sibylco, was mining it.
Yeah.
But what happens when Sibylco goes offline and that mining stops? Turns out it opens up a whole bunch of possibilities, like this radical vision of a civilization of sand.
What's so interesting here is that we have a potential paradigm shift.
Okay.
Sibylco leaving creates a vacuum,
Yeah.
an opportunity to kind of rethink Straty's future.
Right.
Instead of just taking resources, the idea is to use them locally.
Yeah.
Create like a sustainable society, a technologically advanced society, almost like a real-world sandbox.
Like we're hitting reset, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay, let's build something amazing here. But there's another layer to this, right?
Yeah.
This whole idea of space weather and getting ready for solar events.
Uh-huh.
How does that fit in?
Think of it this way. Straty, with its resources and isolation, could become a model for resilience in a world that is facing increasing uncertainty.
Yeah.
And we know that Earth's magnetic field is getting weaker, so we are more vulnerable to solar events like micronovas.
Right.
And the research that you share, particularly that book, Next End of the World,
Yeah.
it really drives home how bad these events can be.
So are we saying we're going to build a civilization that can survive a solar storm?
Exactly. And one of the coolest ideas is these subterranean eco-cities.
Wow.
Essentially, resilient habitats underground, shielded from a solar event.
Okay.
Imagine cities carved beneath Straty's surface,
So cool.
powered by the sand above them.
It's like a modern Atlantis.
Right, but built for the future, not running from the past.
Not fleeing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So what makes this sand so special? Why is it so suitable for this big vision?
It all comes down to what's in the sand.
Okay.
Straty sands are packed with quartz, ilmenite, rutile, zircon, monazite.
Wow.
Each one of these has amazing potential. We're talking solar panels from the quartz, advanced ceramics from the zircon,
Uh-huh.
even the possibility of nuclear technology using monazite.
It's like a treasure chest,
Yeah, it really is.
just waiting to be unlocked.
Yeah,
So instead of shipping these materials off somewhere else, we use them right there on the island.
exactly. One of the sources talks about eco-subterranean mining methods,
Okay.
a way to get these resources with minimal environmental impact.
So less destructive than what Sibelco was doing.
Yeah. And then there's this idea of hyper-local manufacturing, so making everything they need right there.
That's amazing, but how do you even start to build a civilization from scratch?
Right.
Especially with these solar events coming. How do you even begin?
A key figure in this is Luke Hayes.
Yeah.
And he sees it as like a phased approach,
Uh-huh.
beginning with establishing energy independence.
Okay.
So imagine huge solar farms using Strati's sunlight,
Yeah, lots of sun there.
and then using titanium from the sands, they can build wind turbines to capture the ocean winds. They could even look into wave power, tapping into the energy of the sea.
So they're creating this multi-layered energy grid
Yeah.
using all these renewable sources, and it's all powered by the sand.
It really is. And remember, silicon,
Yeah.
which is the basis of modern electronics, comes from silica.
Mhm.
And there's tons of that in the sand.
Right.
So we're talking about a potential for tech advancement that's unlike anything we've seen.
That's so cool, and it's all fueled by this stuff that's just there.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm starting to get the big picture.
Good.
But you said Luke Hayes talks about this phased approach. So what happens after they get energy independence?
That's where the really interesting stuff starts. So with all that clean energy, they can start building those eco-cities underground.
Hold on. I get the solar panels, the wind turbines, the wave power.
Yeah.
But how do you get from sand to an actual city underground? What does that look like?
That's where the magic of advanced manufacturing comes in.
Okay.
Remember all those minerals?
Yeah.
Well, they can be used to make building materials that are super strong and durable.
Okay.
Think like 3D printed structures made from stuff they got from the sand,
Right.
and they'd be designed to withstand anything, even shock waves from a solar event.
So we're not just talking about hiding in a bunker underground.
No.
We're talking about a whole different way of life that's self-sufficient.
Exactly. And that self-sufficiency goes for food, too.
Oh, right.
Think about these cities having advanced agriculture,
Uh-huh.
like hydroponics and aquaponics, growing all the food they need inside in a controlled environment.
It's like a Noah's Ark for the future.
Right.
But instead of animals, they're bringing the stuff to build a new civilization.
Yeah.
But how do they know what's happening above ground? How do they keep track of space weather?
This is where Strati could become like a space weather news hub.
Really?
Imagine a network of high-tech sensors and telescopes,
Okay.
always watching the sun, collecting data on solar activity.
Wow.
They could make these sophisticated prediction models using AI to look at the data.
And give early warnings about possible solar events.
So Strati becomes like an early warning system for the whole planet.
Right.
A lookout post for solar storms.
Exactly. It's about using technology not just to survive, but to actually do well.
Yeah.
They could even share that data with everyone else, helping other places get ready.
So it's a global responsibility.
Yeah.
And one that Strati is really well placed to handle.
Uh-huh.
But let's not forget about the people building these cities monitoring space weather.
Right.
It all seems very technical.
Yeah.
Where does that idea of joyful, responsible abundance fit in?
That's the great thing about this whole idea.
Okay.
It's not just about surviving. It's about creating a good society.
All right.
Imagine living in a community where you have everything you need and you're free to do what you love, connect with nature, be part of something bigger.
I can see how that would be freeing, but wouldn't people get bored?
Mm.
Wouldn't they miss all the excitement of the outside world? Not necessarily the plan includes bringing in parts of the outside world,
Okay.
but in a way that's more sustainable and controlled.
Like what?
Think virtual reality experiences that let you visit anywhere on Earth.
Wow.
Or even explore other planets and think about advanced communication systems
Yeah.
that keep you connected to people wherever they are.
So it's about having a lifestyle that has the best of both worlds.
Exactly. The safety of these underground cities,
Yeah.
but also the access and connection of the digital age.
Right. And what about personal growth?
Oh, yeah. Imagine having a huge library of knowledge at your fingertips.
Uh-huh.
Personalized learning programs designed for what you're interested in.
Cool.
And even AI mentors to guide you.
My mind is blown. This is amazing.
It is pretty incredible.
But how realistic is this? Can you really make a perfect world in a sand pit?
Well, the sources say it's not about making a perfect society.
Okay.
It's about building a community that can adapt and change.
Hmm.
It's about using the challenges of the future to come up with new ideas and grow.
Taking the lemons and making lemonade.
Exactly, but who's going to pay for all this?
That's a good question.
That's where ethical investment comes in.
It's okay.
There are people and organizations who want to support projects that match their values, and Strati, with its focus on sustainability and joyful, responsible abundance, is a perfect example.
It's like investing in the future, not just for Strati, but for everyone.
Right.
But what about the rest of the world?
Yeah.
If Strati becomes this amazing haven, will they just shut everyone else out?
Absolutely not. The vision includes sharing their knowledge and technology with everyone.
Okay.
They want to become a center for sustainable innovation.
So like a place where people can come to learn and work together.
Exactly.
So it's a beacon of hope, an example of what we can do when we face the future with creativity and optimism.
Precisely. And who knows, maybe Strati's success will inspire other places to do the same thing and create a network of these resilient communities.
All connected and all contributing to the world. Wow, this is getting pretty deep, but I like it.
Me too.
We're talking about more than just surviving. We're talking about thriving.
Yeah.
Not just building cities, but building a better future.
And that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah.
Using our knowledge, our technology, and our wisdom to make a world where everyone can do well.
And Strati might just be the perfect place to start.
I think so.
We've covered so much in this deep dive.
Yeah.
From underground cities to space weather news hubs, from AI predictions to joyful, responsible abundance. It's been quite a ride.
It has.
So where do we go from here? How do we make these ideas real? It's funny, we've been talking about this civilization of sand, this vision for the future.
Yeah.
And I keep thinking about how it all comes back to sand.
It is amazing this simple material that we don't think much about
Yeah.
could change not just an island, but how we see civilization.
Right. It's like solutions can come from the most unexpected places.
Exactly.
And it's more than just technology and buildings. It's about making a society that cares about well-being, connection, purpose.
You got the sources we looked at really focus on the people in this transformation.
Yeah.
It's not just about building cities, it's about building community.
And that community goes beyond Strati itself.
Exactly.
That's what I find so interesting.
Yeah.
They're not hiding from the world. They're inviting everyone to join them.
That's right. One source even talks about a global network of these sand cities.
Wow.
Each one using its own resources and knowledge to help everyone.
Imagine
Yeah.
sand cities that are hubs for innovation, sharing knowledge resources, working together on global problems.
Like a futuristic Silk Road.
Yeah, but instead of trading stuff, they're trading ideas.
Exactly.
And it's not just technical stuff. Imagine these cities being cultural centers, too,
Yeah.
where people from all over can come together to celebrate art, music, and all the different ways people express themselves.
It's a beautiful idea.
A melting pot of cultures, all focused on this idea of joyful, responsible abundance. I like that.
But how do we actually get there?
It starts with small steps, pilot projects to show that these ideas can work.
Okay.
The source mentions starting with a small underground community, maybe a research facility or an artist colony.
Like testing the waters before we jump in. And
Yeah.
if it works, it could inspire others to do the same.
Exactly. And as these communities grow, they can start connecting,
Yeah.
sharing what they've learned and working on bigger projects together.
Building a bridge to the future, brick by brick.
I like that analogy.
But can this really work on a global scale?
It's a big goal, but I think it's possible.
Yeah.
Change often starts with a few passionate people who have big dreams.
Right.
And if Strati can show what's possible, it could start a movement that goes way beyond the island.
It's about planting a seed of hope. A seed that could grow into a future where people and nature thrive together.
And it all starts with sand.
This deep dive has been quite a journey.
It really has. From underground cities to space, from solar events to joyful, responsible abundance.
So many ideas and possibilities.
It's given me a lot to think about.
Me too.
And I hope it's done the same for you, our listeners.
Yeah.
As we finish up, I want to leave you with this thought. What if Strati's vision comes true? What if we face the future with creativity, optimism, and respect for our planet?
The future is not something that just happens to us.
Right.
It's something we make, and the choices we make today will shape the world of tomorrow.
Yeah. So let's choose wisely.
Yes.
Let's dream big, and let's build a future that's worthy of the sand beneath our feet.
Well said.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep believing in what humans can do. All right, so get this. We're diving deep into this idea of a civilization of sand.
Okay.
Sounds a little bit like a beach vacation at first, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
But hold on, because it gets way more interesting than that. We're talking about North Stradbroke Island, Minjerribah.
Yeah.
That was the coast of Australia.
Yeah.
And this place is absolutely packed with all sorts of valuable minerals. And some folks are saying that it could actually hold the key to a whole new way of living.
Yeah, what's really intriguing is that Sibelco, the company that used to run a sand mine on Strati, they're having this like big offline get together, I guess you could call it. It's in Spruce Pine, USA in 2024.
Interesting.
And now why spruce pine? That's the question. You know, spruce pine is known for its mineral wealth too.
Right.
So it kind of makes you wonder, are they cooking up something, related to Strati's resources?
Oh, I like that. Like a little puzzle piece we got to figure out.
Yeah.
And get this, for this deep dive, we've got a scientific paper that predicts some seriously wild solar activity. We're talking like solar micronova level wild. And then on top of that, we've got this other document called Civilization of Sand, which lays out a vision for how Strati could actually become this incredible self-sufficient community.
Yeah.
So we've got this crazy mix of kind of doom and gloom and then hope. And I don't know. I'm hooked already. What about you?
Yeah, no, I think the connection there seems to be about resilience, right? So, if these predictions about solar events and things like that are accurate, then we'd need some pretty serious backup plans.
Right.
And that's where I think Strati comes in. Because the idea is that the mineral wealth there, coupled with some of these, really cutting-edge ideas we're going to discuss, could actually make it a blueprint for not just surviving, but thriving in a dramatically changed world.
Okay, you definitely got me more curious now.
All right.
So let's start with the Civilization of Sand document.
Okay.
And this island's unique potential. Like, what is it about Strati that makes it so special when we're talking about minerals?
Well, the sand on this island, it's not just your average beach sand. It's got this really unique mix of minerals.
Okay.
We're talking quartz, ilmenite, rutile, zircon, and even monazite.
Wow.
And each of these has its own, special use and potential. And when you put them all together, you've got this incredible toolkit for building a self-reliant society.
Okay, so it's like a one-stop shop for civilization building.
Pretty much, yeah.
All right, well, break it down for me. What's so valuable about each one of these minerals?
Okay, well, think of it this way. Quartz is pure silicon dioxide, so it's perfect for things like making solar panels.
Okay.
Ilmenite and rutile, those are both sources of titanium, which is incredibly strong, light, and it can be used for everything from paint to spacecraft. Zircon, that's where you get zirconium, and we use that in nuclear reactors. And then you've got monazite. And that's the one that holds rare earth elements, which are key to, all sorts of advanced tech, like magnets and electronics.
It's almost like Strati's sand has everything you would need to create, like a high-tech society from scratch. We're talking about energy. We're talking about construction materials, advanced tech. This is kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah, and it's not just the variety, it's the sheer abundance of these minerals on Strati.
Right.
The Civilization of Sand document argues that, this concentrated wealth could be a real game changer. It allows for this hyperlocal manufacturing and minimizes reliance on global supply chains, which, we all know can be a bit fragile these days.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're not just talking about surviving, but potentially like leapfrogging ahead in terms of technology and sustainability. It's like Strati is this hidden treasure chest just waiting to be unlocked.
Yeah, exactly. But before we get too carried away with the possibilities, we do need to, address the elephant in the room. Those solar predictions that we mentioned earlier.
Right.
The 2022 supplement to the next End of the World paper, it paints a pretty stark picture of potential events triggered by increased solar activity.
Okay, let's unpack that a little bit. So we're talking about more than just your average solar flares, right?
Right.
This document specifically mentions something called a solar micronova.
Yeah. And while, the scientific community is still debating the likelihood of an event like that, the potential consequences are really significant.
Okay.
Imagine massive disruptions to our electrical grids, satellites, even our communication systems. It would be like a global reset button of sorts.
Whoa. That's some heady stuff.
Yeah.
But it also kind of puts the idea of a self-sufficient civilization on Strati into a whole new perspective.
Right.
Because if the world as we know it were to be disrupted, a place like that could become a vital refuge, really.
Exactly. And that's where this whole idea of Kardashev's subterranean eco-cities comes in.
Okay.
So think, like self-sustaining cities built underground, shielded from whatever harsh conditions might be happening on the surface.
Okay.
And with Strati's mineral wealth, they could have everything they need to not just survive, but thrive.
But we're talking about going full mole people, but like with a high-tech, eco-conscious twist.
That's a good way to put it.
I mean, it's starting to sound a little bit like a sci-fi novel, but I'm kind of loving it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does have that, that futuristic feel to it. But I think the idea is grounded in practicality, too.
Okay.
Imagine, utilizing Strati's resources to create energy-efficient, climate-controlled environments underground. They could even harness geothermal energy, grow food in hydroponic farms.
Right.
It's about creating this closed-loop system that's resilient to, whatever external shocks might come its way.
It's wild to think that something as like simple as sand could be the key to a whole new way of life.
I know.
But how do we actually get from like sand dunes to subterranean cities? Like, is there somebody out there that actually has a plan for all of this?
There is. And it involves a pretty radical reimagining of how we approach mining.
Totally.
The Civilization of Sand document introduces us to a guy named Luke Hayes. And he proposes a new method. He calls it eco-subterranean mining. And his idea is to extract these resources in a way that minimizes the environmental impact, but maximizes the benefit for the local community.
Okay, I'm all for eco-friendly mining, but how does that actually work underground?
Yeah.
And how does that tie into this whole vision of a self-sufficient civilization?
That's where it gets really interesting. Hayes argues that by shifting the manufacturing underground, you can create this totally closed loop system.
Right.
Instead of exporting raw materials, you use them locally to create finished products. And the only thing you export is clean energy generated from, all those abundant resources on Strati.
So we're talking about a complete paradigm shift here.
Yeah.
Instead of being a resource colony, Strati becomes this hub of innovation and sustainability, potentially even like powering other regions with clean energy. That's a pretty powerful vision.
It is, and it's one that really challenges our assumptions about what's possible. But before we, get too deep into the how, let's take a step back and consider the why for a second.
Okay.
What are the driving forces behind this vision of a civilization of sand?
All right, back to the big picture. Why should we care about all of this? What makes this vision so compelling?
Well, it's about more than just surviving a potential, disaster.
Right.
It's about building a better future, one that's resilient, sustainable, and frankly, I think really cool. Think about it. What if we could actually create a society that wasn't so reliant on all these fragile global systems?
Yeah.
What if we could design a way of life that actually works with nature, not against it?
I'm getting this image in my head, like this hidden oasis that's thriving, while like the world outside is grappling with all this chaos, almost like, I don't know, a futuristic Atlantis.
Yeah.
But with like solar panels and hydroponic gardens instead of mermaids.
Yeah, that's not far off, Remember those Kardashev subterranean eco-cities we were talking about? They're not just like bunkers. They're designed as these vibrant, interconnected spaces with natural light, green spaces, even advanced climate control.
Okay.
Imagine strolling through a park, sunlight filtering down from above.
Right.
All while being completely sheltered from whatever storms might be raging on the surface.
Okay, now that sounds pretty appealing, even without, an apocalypse looming.
Right.
But wouldn't it be incredibly expensive to build something like that?
That's where Strati's mineral wealth becomes such a game changer.
What?
Remember all that quartz we talked about?
Yeah.
It's not just good for solar panels on the surface. It's also perfect for creating, fiber optic cables.
Right.
Which could channel natural light deep underground.
Whoa, so we could literally have sunshine underground.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this whole sand civilization could be more than just like survival.
Yep.
It could be like a whole new level of human flourishing.
Yeah. And, let's not forget about Luke Hayes and his innovative approach to mining. He calls it eco-subterranean mining.
Right.
And it's about more than just minimizing environmental impact.
Yep.
It's about, transforming the way we think about resource extraction altogether.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Yeah.
How does this eco-subterranean mining actually work? It sounds a bit like an oxymoron to me. Like, how can you dig things up underground and be eco-friendly about it?
Well, it's all about this localized closed-loop system. So instead of digging stuff up and shipping it off somewhere else to be processed,
Right.
Hayes proposes doing everything right there on Stratty. Imagine factories built underground, powered by renewable energy,
Right.
turning those raw materials into finished goods.
So it's like taking that whole farm-to-table concept and
Exactly.
applying it to manufacturing.
Yeah.
Everything is sourced and produced locally, minimizing waste and transportation costs. That's pretty brilliant.
And here's the kicker. The only thing that they would export from this underground city is clean energy.
Oh, wow.
Think solar, wind, maybe even geothermal,
Yep.
all powered by Stratty's abundant resources.
Wow. So instead of being a source of raw materials for, other countries to exploit,
Right.
Stratty becomes this powerhouse of clean energy, potentially even like influencing the global energy landscape.
Yeah.
It's a pretty radical shift in power dynamics.
Yeah, it is. It's a vision that really flips the script on what we typically think of when we hear mining.
Right.
Instead of, environmental destruction and exploitation,
Yeah.
it becomes about symbiosis,
Yes.
working with the land to create a sustainable future.
All right, I'm sold on the why.
No way.
But let's get into the how a little bit more. How do we actually go from this sandy island to this subterranean utopia?
Well, the Civilization of Sand document actually outlines a phased approach.
Okay.
And it starts with the most essential element of any civilization.
Makes sense.
Food security.
Of course, yeah.
They propose building, these high-tech greenhouses powered by renewable energy, capable of growing crops year-round, even underground.
Makes sense. You can't build a civilization on an empty stomach.
Exactly.
So we've got our underground farms going. What's next on the agenda for our sand-powered society?
Next comes building up their manufacturing capabilities. Remember those rare earth elements found in monazite?
Yeah.
Those are essential for all sorts of advanced tech, from high-efficiency electronics to even spacecraft components.
Wow.
The document proposes using these resources to develop a cutting-edge manufacturing sector, all powered by clean energy, of course.
Hold on. We're going from growing carrots to building spaceships.
That's the idea.
That's a pretty impressive leap. It's incredible to think that this tiny island could become a hub for, such advanced technology.
Yeah, and it doesn't stop there.
Okay.
They also talk about developing, state-of-the-art communication systems, medical facilities,
Right.
even cultural and recreational spaces, all underground, all integrated into this, sustainable ecosystem.
It's like building a microcosm of a thriving society, but beneath the surface.
Exactly.
But here's a question, what about the people?
Yeah.
How do we make sure that everyone benefits from this incredible transformation?
That's a crucial point. And the document really stresses the importance of community engagement and equitable distribution of resources.
Okay.
They propose establishing systems that ensure everyone has access to education, healthcare, and, opportunities to participate in decision-making.
So it's not just about building cool tech and living in a fancy underground bunker.
Right.
It's about creating a society that's, truly fair and just.
Exactly. It's about using technology and innovation to empower people,
Right.
not just to survive, but to thrive.
Throughout this whole conversation,
Yeah.
I've been struck by how this vision of a civilization of sand goes beyond just practicality. It's almost philosophical,
Yeah.
It's like a reimagining of what it means to be human in a world that's constantly changing.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's about challenging our assumptions about, what's possible,
Yeah.
about how we relate to our environment,
Right?
and about what kind of future we actually want to create.
This has been an incredible journey so far.
Yeah.
We've gone from talking about sand dunes to imagining a thriving subterranean society
I know.
powered by clean energy and, guided by these principles of sustainability and social justice.
But we're not done yet.
Oh, there's more.
There's still so much to explore. In our final part, we're going to delve deeper into the social, economic, and ethical considerations of actually building this kind of civilization.
Yeah.
We'll examine the potential challenges, the opportunities, and the really big questions that, this vision raises.
All right, listeners, buckle up.
Yeah.
We're about to enter the final phase of our deep dive into the civilization of sand. Stay tuned for part 3, where we'll explore the heart and soul of this bold vision for the future.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the civilization of sand. We've explored the incredible potential of North Stradbroke Island. Its unique mineral resources, that whole vision for those sustainable subterranean cities, and then that really kind of radical idea of, eco-subterranean mining. I don't know about you, but it's a lot to take in, right?
It is,
Yeah.
but it's also incredibly exciting, right? We're talking about a potential paradigm shift here,
Yeah.
a reimagining of how we live, how we work, and how we relate to our planet, really.
You know what's really sticking with me? This idea of joyful, responsible abundance that we kind of touched on earlier.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not just about survival or even sustainability. It's about creating a society where people can genuinely thrive, which I think is really cool.
Right, and I think that's what sets this vision apart. It's not just about building a high-tech bunker to weather the storm. It's about creating a society that prioritizes, well-being, connection, and a deep respect for the environment. Okay, so how do we actually create that? What are the key ingredients for a joyful, responsible, and abundant society, especially one built underground?
Community is essential.
Right.
The Civilization of Sand document talks about designing spaces that, actually encourage interaction and collaboration. Imagine community gardens, shared workshops, even underground parks where people can connect and enjoy nature.
I love that. It's like taking the best aspects of village life and weaving them into this futuristic underground setting. But how do we prevent it from, feeling isolated,
Right.
cut off from the rest of the world?
That's where technology comes in.
Okay.
Remember that idea of a community radio and TV station we discussed earlier?
Yeah.
That could be a way to, share stories, information, local talent.
Right.
It could foster a sense of belonging and connection.
Yeah, and we could take it even further with things like virtual reality.
Yeah.
Imagine creating these virtual spaces where people can interact, learn, and even experience the world beyond the physical confines of the underground city. It's like having a window to the outside world, but without the actual window. You know what I mean?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And it ties into another crucial element, too, lifelong learning and personal growth.
Okay.
Imagine having access to a vast library of knowledge, online courses, even virtual mentors, all from, the comfort of your underground dwelling. It's about fostering a culture of curiosity and continuous learning.
So it's not just about meeting your basic needs, but it's about creating an environment where people are encouraged to explore their passions, learn new things, and even contribute their unique talents to the community.
Precisely. And that brings us to another really important aspect, governance and decision-making.
Right.
How do we ensure that everyone has a voice in shaping the future of this civilization?
Yeah, that's a big one. We talked about the potential of gamified democracy to, make civic engagement more accessible and fun. Imagine voting on proposals, participating in debates, and even contributing to policymaking through interactive games and simulations.
It's a way to make democracy more engaging, transparent, and responsive to the needs of the community. And, with the security and immutability of blockchain technology, we could create a system that's really resistant to, corruption and manipulation.
It's incredible to think that something that started as a conversation about sand has evolved into this vision for a truly equitable and empowering society.
I know, it's amazing.
But let's be real for a moment here.
Okay.
Building any civilization, even a small-scale one, is going to be a massive undertaking. What are some of the challenges we might face?
Well, there's the obvious technical challenge of actually building and maintaining a subterranean city.
Yeah.
Think about things like ventilation, waste management,
Right.
ensuring a reliable energy supply, all of that.
And let's not forget the human element. Even with the best intentions, conflicts are bound to arise. How do we create a system for resolving disputes and ensuring that everyone feels heard and respected?
Those are all valid concerns. And that's where, adaptability and resilience really come in. This vision isn't about creating some, perfect utopia.
Right.
It's about building a community that's flexible, that's willing to learn from their mistakes, and is committed to continuous improvement.
So it's about embracing the journey, knowing that there will be bumps along the way, but staying focused on the ultimate goal.
Exactly.
Creating a society that's not just sustainable, but truly joyful and fulfilling.
Exactly. And remember, we don't have to do it all at once. We can start small, experiment with new ideas, and learn as we go.
That's a really empowering message. It's about taking that first step, even if it's just a small one, and believing that a better future is possible.
And who knows, maybe this vision of a civilization of sand will inspire others to, reimagine what's possible in their own communities.
I hope so. This deep dive has been an incredible journey. We went from exploring the potential of this tiny island to envisioning a whole new way of living.
It has been, hasn't it?
It's been a pleasure sharing this exploration with you and all of our listeners out there.
Likewise.
So as we wrap up our deep dive, let's leave our listeners with this final thought. What if the future isn't something that just happens to us, but something we actively create? One grain of sand, one idea, one community at a time.
What a beautiful and inspiring way to end our journey. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep believing in the power of human ingenuity to shape a better future.